Chapter 1275. Shang-Chi did not know how sinister the merchants of the Tang Empire were. Nor did he understand how patriotic the people of a country without Allah were. He only thought that his God Allah was the most powerful and worthy of his sacrifice. However, he did not know that there was a civilization called Yen Huang that existed longer than Allah. Shang-Chi thought about it and found someone to discuss it. Finally, he decided to use Lu Bo's method and try it out. The trick of making people surrender directly was not easy to use. When Shang-Chi was happy, he rewarded Lu Bo with a lot of meat as a reward. At the same time, he made an exception and allowed Lu Bo to take a hot bath. Lu Bo took a bath as fast as he could and was very worried when he went back. He was afraid that the protection team would attack the camp at night. He had read in the newspapers that the special rescue team could sacrifice themselves at critical moments to protect the person they were rescuing. Lu Bo did not wish for any loss to the people in the sapling protection team. There were more than 600 people in the sapling protection team. It was not easy to nurture the sapling protection team. It was not worth it to exchange a life for a life during the rescue. He should think of a way to make it easier for the protection team during the rescue. When the rescue was successful, more than 600 duo people were nothing. As long as the journey was long enough, one protection team could torture them to death. However, the duo people came separately. Not only were there more than 600 people, there were also other people who were threatening the people in the country. Or rather, the people of the Tang Empire were on other roads, hoping that the situation there would be better. Then first of all, they must kill or capture all the duo people here. If they let them go, more would die. Lu Bo had to pretend to be happy even though he was worried. He ate meat and shouted happily with the 24 people who followed him. His hand was writing on the ground for the 24 people to see. The 24 people had a determined look in their eyes. They decided that if they met the protection team tomorrow, they would do the same. They were very excited that the country did not give up on them. Moreover, they knew in advance and started the rescue. Otherwise, the duo cannibals would have suddenly pushed them out when they encountered the country's regular army. Looking at the situation, after the country received the news, they sent elite people to intercept and rescue them on the road as fast as possible. Moreover, it was the special forces of the 24-hour, all-weather, all-terrain special forces that were dispatched, the strong protection team. If this was not love, Lu Bo saw that his subordinates had agreed. He worriedly wrote out his guess. What if the protection team attacks the camp at night? Before we came here, we heard that Xiao Bao and Cuckoo had arrived in Idyll. Presumably, their intelligence personnel had received the news and sent people to help them. They knew that Xiao Bao and Cuckoo were resolute in this aspect. No matter where, how far away, or how difficult the process was, for the sake of one person, they could mobilize the entire nation's strength. This was even more thorough than the previous Han dynasty. At that time, those who offended the great Han dynasty would be punished for their actions. If it were Xiao Bao and Cuckoo, they wouldn't care if they offended them openly or secretly. If they felt that they were a threat to them, they would eliminate them first. They wouldn't even allow them to scold them. After all, dignity was more important than life. That was why domestic businessmen were so obedient. Part of it was because they were afraid of Xiao Bao, and part of it was out of respect. Businessmen often went abroad without contact with the outside world. They wouldn't know how fortunate it was to have the protection of the country. The 24 people thought and began to think of a solution. They wanted to survive, but they didn't want to sacrifice more Tang people. They would only lose one person, but their family would be taken care of. Therefore, sacrificing themselves was the last choice at the critical moment. Then, how could they cooperate with the protection team? When they were saving themselves, the most important thing was to reduce the casualties of their own rescue personnel during the rescue process. The 25 people led by Lu Bo thought as they ate. They were eating venison, which tasted good, so they would let out happy cries from time to time to avoid suspicion. After a while, one of them wrote on the ground, "Do you still remember the Monopoly game? It's the kind with interesting portraits, especially for children between 6 and 2 years old. The parents are required to cooperate with the game. The characters are all models, and there are even springs. When playing, the parents have to cooperate with the game to make the children feel more specific and profound. Yes. Another person wrote, "This game is not popular, and the cost is too high. Not all parents have the time to cooperate." The person who wrote before continued, "There is a character called Richido. He is a character who is good at calculation and unwilling to be taken advantage of. When the parents cooperate, the oral language is, 'I'll let you take advantage of me once.' Greedy for small gains will lead to big losses. I still have a way, humph." Yes, there is him. Another person wrote, "Don't worry about the specific character he shows. As long as we let the protection team see him, I believe they will guess it. We will cooperate." This person wrote again. Lubo saw the words and was in a dilemma. He wrote, "How can we let the protection team see him? Formation torches." This person wrote. The others' eyes lit up, and they immediately thought of the relationship. Lubo thought about it and wrote, "Eat now, practice standing. There may only be one chance later. Everyone focus." Therefore, they ate in the tent and walked back and forth like dancing. When others saw them through the shadows of the tent, they would think that they were happy eating. After practicing a few times, Lubo stopped and wrote, "Get ready, I'll discuss. Don't go to the wrong position later. If you find the position wrong, adjust in time." After writing, he stuffed the last bit of meat into his mouth. Lubo came to Sang-Chi's tent again and told Sang-Chi that they had a good formation that could arrange the hostages and their own people together, making it difficult for the enemy to distinguish them. Sang-Chi thought about it and agreed. First, they changed their clothes and let the hostages wear the same clothes as the cannibals. Then they formed a formation. Lubo led 24 men, each holding a torch, and walked around. From time to time, he would say what a certain person should do. As soon as they walked, the torches they held formed a pattern of small dots. When seen from a distance and from a high place, they would consciously connect the dots into a line. The protection team did not evacuate at all. Instead, they watched from a mountain in the distance. According to the plan, it should be to give the cannibals time to prepare and think. If the cannibals really killed, they could only choose to attack. It was impossible for them to throw their weapons and surrender. If they threw their weapons when others asked them to, how stupid would they be? They were considering how long it would take for more people to fall into the trap. Once they ate the poisoned food, they would be able to rescue the people. During the day, they had discovered that there were some people in the group who were not from the border. The appearance and attire of this small group all indicated that they were truly Tang people and had a place of origin. Leader, look, there's a problem." While the protection team was waiting and resting, the person in charge of observation came to the leader and whispered. This leader was from the Zero Protection Team. His surname was Wang, and he followed the main family's surname, Wang Miao. It was a very feminine name. When he was born, there were 3 small rivers near his home that supplied water to the fields. Therefore, he was named the 3 Rivers. However, he was a pure man and had very strong combat power. He and the other 2 members of the number 0 seedling protection team led the team. The people they led were the number 1 team, which was directly transferred from the main family's personal guards. In other words, the current operation could only succeed and could not fail. Hearing the sound, Wang Miao picked up the binoculars and was stunned. It felt very familiar. He muttered, "This picture is... Leader, it's Richido. 3 days before we came out, my child played with this. His saying was, 'I'll let you take advantage of me this time. Greedy for small gains will lead to big losses. I still have a way, humph.'" The informant reminded him. Wang Miao suddenly understood. No wonder it was so familiar. The children at home had special care, guidance, and education in the inner courtyard. It was much better than ordinary schools. Just the various tools used were not something that ordinary places could afford. During education, other than the major lessons, the rest was taught according to their aptitude. According to the words of the young master and young lady, every child was a star in the sky. They had their own place in brilliance. Even if they were treated as fireflies, they should fly around and not be caught in the palm of one's hand. Therefore, it was most reassuring to leave the children in the inner courtyard. They would definitely have the best games of Tang, including that character, Richido. Wang Miao did not think that what he saw was a coincidence. Although the positions and changes of the torch were not correct at times, it represented the various forms of Richido in a child's game. Wang Miao narrowed his eyes. He did not think that the captured person was so bored that he held a torch and played with a jigsaw puzzle. He was about to lose his life. Little Nine, if you were in the other party's situation, what would you think? Wang Miao asked the informant softly. Me. Little Nine pointed at himself, and then lowered his head to think. When he raised his head again, he said, "Let me put myself in this situation. I would think that Tang has finally sent people to save me. They came so quickly, and in such a timely manner. Furthermore, they sent out a strong protection team. How would they save us? Attack. Night attack." "I have the same thoughts as you." Wang Miao nodded. "Then why did they choose such a character? Since they know how to play games. If they want us to save them, the best character should be the confused bug, right? The confused bug is the character model of a 4-year-old child. His words are, 'Daddy, Mommy, save me. I can't find my way home. I've been cheated again. I don't even have the money to buy candy.' Right? Yes, Dazed Bug is the best one. In this situation, since they know about Richido, it's impossible that they don't know about the other characters. Based on my analysis, they are all rich people, or at least businessmen. They have played the same game before, and they even played it with their children. However, the children usually choose cute and confused characters, similar to themselves. I don't believe that all of their children would choose Richido. There must be some who would choose the confused bug. At the same time, the confused bug's words are suitable for them to express that they are in urgent need of rescue." Little Nine analyzed. Wang Miao took out a cigarette. Cigars were supplied by special personnel. They could quickly replenish the body's nicotine. Of course, there would be addiction to smoking, but it was different from drug addiction. It would not make people stubbornly dependent on it. Wang Miao used his clothes to cover his mouth and took 2 puffs. He slowly exhaled and said, "There are very smart people among them. They are worried that we will attack at night and cause us losses. So they are using this method to remind us. At the same time, they will know that this person or group of people should have a relative position there. Otherwise, they will not be able to start the puzzle." "Then what should we do?" Little Nine asked. "Adjust the strategy slightly. Leave behind the canned food we prepared. At the same time, write a letter to the cannibals, and write a poem at the critical moment. I believe that they will be able to guess it. Tomorrow's confrontation will be cancelled. Immediately send a message back to ask about the situation. I want to know who the puzzle is, his education, and the composition of his family." Wang Miao quickly made a decision. He was worried that the cooperation between the two sides would not be good enough. Chapter 1276. After working on the jigsaw puzzle for an hour, Lu Bo and the others were tired. They did not know if the people of the sapling protection team understood what they meant. Anyway, they had done what they could and should do. The rest was up to fate. The duo people were very satisfied with the result of the rehearsal. They found that if they followed the formation, the other party did not dare to shoot. The bullets would fly past one person and hit another. Shang-Chi was especially happy. He rewarded Lu Bo with some meat and told them to sleep well. Tomorrow, they would use this formation to deal with the Tang soldiers. What he did not understand was that the bullet penetration of the Tang soldiers' rifles was deliberately designed. Zhang Xiaobao and Wang Wan felt that the probability of using this kind of gun to hit a person was very high. The penetrating injury could also make people lose their fighting strength. When cleaning up the battlefield, there were still pistols to hold the line. Therefore, when making the guns, they made them according to their previous 3 and 8 covers. At the same time, they also made a lot of box cannons. Although the muzzle of the box cannons always jumped up when shooting, it depended on how it was used. One was used to shoot at the waist, and the other was used to put the gun flat. Holding the gun with both hands and shooting flat, people who were good at shooting could shoot like a machine gun. However, in addition to such guns, there were also bullets and guns with a very good stopping effect. Together with the use of strong penetrating ability, they complemented each other. This was especially true for snipers. Their bullets would not penetrate, for fear of hurting people who should not be hurt. Moreover, Even a gun with strong penetrating ability could be used to not penetrate people by using a simple method. It would make the bullet roll and stay in the person's body. Shang-Chi felt that with the formation, the enemy would not dare to shoot. In fact, even if there was no formation, as long as the person beside the hostage was not targeted, one would lose a life if there was a mistake. Amidst Lu Bo's worry and Shang-Chi's happiness, the night passed quickly. When they woke up in the morning, the moon had not disappeared. The sun had risen, forming a beautiful sun and moon hanging together. After falling out, the duo people no longer gave the people at the border any face. Affected by the march, the duo people would eat in the morning, but the people who were threatened could not even see a mouthful of porridge. The people living at the border finally knew who was good to them. In the past, they thought that the Tang Empire was very far away from them and was not as close as India. They thought that they had the final say in their lives, and that everyone who came into contact with them had to exchange goods with them. In their eyes, there were only benefits and benefits. There was no sense of belonging. Even if some people went to the Great Tang to earn more money, in their eyes, it was just more money. They didn't belong to either side. But yesterday's experience made them realize that they belonged to the Great Tang, because the Great Tang had come to rescue them. Previously, they were envious of the Tang Empire's soldiers, who had specially come to save Lu Bo and the others. However, when they realized that the Tang Empire's soldiers did not shoot at the cannibals they were holding, they realized that they were afraid of being shot. At that moment they were moved. Whoever was good to them, they would be good to them. When they were in danger, they were willing to repay whoever saved their lives with their lives. At the same time, they were filled with resentment towards Lu Bo and the others. They felt that Lu Bo and the others had no conscience. Their people had come to save them, and had chased them so far, but they were still helping the enemy. They should die and be struck by lightning. Therefore, when they woke up in the morning, and saw that Lu Bo and the others also received some fried noodles and water, the people at the border looked at them with eyes full of resentment. When they set off, the team moved very slowly. The cannibals looked around vigilantly, afraid that they would be shot. The hot weather and the pressure in their hearts made them sweat a lot. Lu Bo's 25 people were also sweating, and their eyes were bloodshot. Seeing that the sun was high in the sky, the cannibals began to prepare to eat. Their meal was very simple. There were two types, one was roasted, and the other was fried. The roasted meat was meat, but there wasn't much fresh meat for them to roast. They were all roasted very salty meat in the past. They didn't have a pot to fry it, so they brought fried rice and fried noodles. The fried noodles were processed by the people at the border. The so-called meal was to stop and be vigilant while stuffing water into their stomachs. There was still no share for the people at the border. They were only given a little at night, so that they wouldn't starve to death. Lu Bo and the other 25 people were divided into 6 portions of fried rice. It was much worse than the fried noodles in the morning. The rice was even fried, and there wasn't any taste of salt in it. 25 people were divided into 6 portions. Each person could only eat a little, and there wasn't much water, unless they encountered a river. Looking at the food the cannibals ate, it was nothing more than roasted and salted meat. Lu Bo was homesick. Not to mention how much money they had at home. They could eat very good meals. Even if they went out and found a place to eat some snacks, it would be better than their current life. You cannibals usually look very confident, but what's there to be confident about? Look at the broken things you eat. In the next life, even if you bribe the king of hell, you won't be there. Just as they were eating, a gunshot came from the left side of the forest. They were so scared that they immediately lay down on the ground. They had already found that this method was not bad. After a while, there was no additional movement. Shang-Chi signaled with his eyes, and 6 cannibals stood out. They escorted more than a dozen people at the border to the place where the gunshot had just come from. The 6 cannibals stood in the middle with knives in their hands. They made more than a dozen people turn their backs to them and walk in circles, so it was very difficult for them to walk. Some people walked sideways, while others walked backwards. When they reached the place, they didn't see anyone. There were many wooden boxes on the ground. After counting, there were more than 70 boxes. As for the specific number, The person who knew how to count couldn't count. Usually he would count to about 60, but today he was extraordinarily long. Most of the boxes were filled with iron sheets. There were also 2 boxes that were wrapped in that kind of shape. For a moment, they couldn't compare with the things they had seen before. The 6 cannibals looked around vigilantly, and each box was carried back. The boxes were not light, and they had to be carried by the hostages. When they came back, they reported that they found a lot of things like this. Shang-Chi kept retreating, afraid that there would be things that would suddenly explode. He saw that there was a piece of paper with words written in the box. The words looked very familiar. It was the language they used. However, he sadly found that he couldn't read. Not only him, but the people who came with him couldn't read. Frowning, Shang-Chi planned to let people throw the boxes away for fear of danger. When Lu Bo saw this, he hurriedly dissuaded him and said to Shang-Chi, I know your words. You see, I speak very fluently with you. I don't have to learn the Tang language like you do. You know them? Shang-Chi couldn't describe what he felt in his heart. He waved his hand and let Lu Bo take a look. Lu Bo sighed. How important it was to know a foreign language. He was really lucky. In the past, he specially learned to do business in the future. Not only did he know the language of the cannibals, but he also knew the Tianju script and a few small Indian languages. He pondered again. Perhaps the protection team, who threw the boxes, didn't expect that the cannibals were different from them. They were now educated from a young age. They didn't even know their own language. However, this protection team was also extraordinary. The writing of the cannibals was really beautiful. As expected, the inner courtyard of the Zhang family and Wang family was not simple. General Shang-Chi, I'll read it accordingly. Lu Bo greeted Shang-Chi. Shang-Chi was very sad. He didn't know his own language, and needed an outsider to read it for him. The difference between countries. Then he nodded and motioned to Lu Bo. I'm warning you to eat more people. Right now, you've captured 189 people of my great Tang. If one of them dies, we'll believe that you'll kill the rest. In other words, we'll give up on dealing with you. Your 600-some people can just wait to be covered in cannon fire. I trust that you know what cannon fire is. These things are food. Some of them are for you, and the rest are for the Tang people. There will be a river in front of you for a while. You can replenish your water. Some of them are canned food, and some are self-heating food for the Tang people. There is pork in them. Don't eat it. Arrange your formation well. We will sneak attack you from time to time. Don't think that you can threaten us with the people who killed us. It's still the same as before. If one of you dies, we will fire. Pray to Allah of your sect. From the moment you participated in the conspiracy against my Jiangnan road, the heavens decided your life and death. If you have a chance to survive, let me tell you. The brand of the food is called Richido. It is a series of food. In the future, you may have the money to buy it and enjoy it. After Lu Bo finished reading, he looked nervously at Shang-Chi. His body kept trembling, giving the impression that he was afraid that the cannibals would kill them in anger. However, he and the other 24 people who heard it knew that the picture they put together yesterday was useful. Lu Bo was really moved. The seedling protection team was indeed the seedling protection team. Shang-Chi was also trembling. He was so angry that he wanted to kill people in front of the Tang army. However, he really didn't dare to. He nodded vigorously and walked forward. He pointed at the words on a can and asked, "What does it say?" Lu Bo glanced at it and licked his lips. He asked loudly, "General Shang-Chi, these are the words of the Tang Empire. Don't you already know the Tang Empire? Don't you recognize the words? You can't recognize your own words, but you should recognize ours, right?" Shang-Chi's face darkened. "I'll let you read it." "Okay, I'll read it." "Yes, ask about the beauty of mountains and rivers. Explore the rainbows of thousands of rivers. The clouds in a foreign land can be low, but the feelings of old friends are high. Affirming that the pine stands tall, and seeing through the gale is the wormwood. A man who hides his head is not a good man, but does not stand upright like a knife." General Shang-Chi, you really don't recognize this word? It's written very well. Did you hear what I read just now? In fact, the first part describes the scenery, then the second part describes the meaning, and the last part expresses one's aspirations. This is a rhyme poem, starting with the rhyme and ending with the rhyme. Lu Bo's voice was louder this time. Shang-Chi frowned and pondered for a moment. He waved to the other 24 people who followed Lu Bo and called them over. He first looked at the cans and found that the words were the same. He gave one to each person and ordered the 3 people on his side to separate the 24 people far away from each other so that they could read it. Shang-Chi had a feeling that things weren't that simple. There might be something else written on the cans, but he believed that the other 24 people wouldn't be able to remember it after Lu Bo read it once. Therefore, he asked them separately. He stared at Lu Bo and observed Lu Bo's expression. Lu Bo wasn't worried at all. The words on the cans were the same, but it depended on how one looked at it. The words were written in circles on the outside of the cans. He believed that even if the mini cannibals knew the words, they wouldn't be able to understand the meaning behind it. The content was as he had said. The first part described the scenery, followed by the thoughts, and finally expressed one's aspirations. Speaking of which, this poem was very ordinary. The words used were simple, and there were no references. However, this was an acrostic poem. He was afraid that he wouldn't know, so he specifically wrote acrostic and horizontal words to remind him. When the words in front of each sentence were put together, it was a test to see if he could read. Lu Bo couldn't use words to describe his feelings. At this moment, he didn't care about life and death. He was proud of his country. This was the special forces that had been mobilized for him and the others. This was the foundation of the special forces, the Seedling Protection Team. It seemed like there was nothing that they couldn't do. They were a highly intelligent team that had 24 hours, all-terrain and all-terrain. If he really died, it was because of his bad luck, and not because his country didn't work hard enough. After a full 30 minutes, when Lu Bo was sleepy, he looked at the 24 people reciting the poem and came back. He recited it to Shang-Chi. Only then did Shang-Chi feel relieved. It was a poem that he had heard before. The Zhang family and Wang family of Sanshui County of the Great Tang had made canned food for the inner courtyard. Every canned food had words on it. When the inner courtyard went out to do work, seeing the words on the canned food would strengthen their beliefs. Thinking about it, this was also the case. Just as he felt relieved, Shang-Chi suddenly became worried again. He asked Lu Bo, what's different about that? Lu Bo knew what he was asking about. He smiled flatteringly and replied respectfully, canned food is canned food. It has to be slowly boiled and roasted with water and fire. It can't be too hot, or it will explode. There's probably no pork in it. The food left for us to eat has pork in it. This is more convenient to heat it up. Pour water into that little tube. Once the food comes into contact with the water, it will heat up the food. As Lu Bo spoke, he swallowed twice. He ate a little fried noodles in the morning. At noon, there was not enough fried rice for 6 people. Moreover, it was Highland barley rice. When he was at home, this was what he fed the animals, and other ingredients had to be added. Now he could finally eat the food that was specially made for the special forces. It was said that the taste was not as good as freshly made food. However, no matter how bad it was specially made by the Zhang family and Wang family. After heating it up, it could be used as a secondary cooking pot. It was 100 times better than stir-fried Highland barley rice. Shang-Chi was angry. He had to bring pork. If the canned food was edible by himself, he would have to give them canned food. If not, they would starve to death. What if the Tang army really opened fire? Let me see. You cook. You can eat what you can. Shang-Chi had no choice but to let Lu Bo do it. The words had already said that there was a river in front. If there was a river, there would be water. Come all of you. Learn from me. Lu Bo took the water bag and demonstrated first. He poured the water into the small hole. The 24 people who came with him watched first. After a while, that thing was filled with water. Lu Bo touched it with his hand and said, "It's hot. It will be even hotter later. You all go and teach the others. Let's eat together. We will be hungrier after eating just now." After the 24 people saw it, they immediately pulled the people at the junction to do it. Not only was it fun, but they could also wait to eat hot food. Shang-Chi looked at them swallowing their saliva and asked Lu Bo, "What is this?" It's the military rations used by the Tang army. The canned food is actually the same. It can't be helped. It's too far away. It can't be compared to eating at home. Just make do. It's not easy to be a soldier and follow orders. Lu Bo explained. His tone was filled with endless sighs. Chapter 1277. It didn't take long for the marching rations of 189 people to heat up. The place next to the rations for boiling soup also bulged. The thing inside swelled after drinking water. Licking his lips, Lu Bo asked Shang-Chi. Do you want to open it? There's pork inside. Open it. It's not like I haven't seen a pig before. I don't want to eat it. Shang-Chi insisted on seeing what it was. Before Lu Bo opened it, someone opened it first and cheered happily. Mine is braised pork and green beans. I know it. It's rice from the northern part of Hebei province. There are also a few pickles. Let me see, spicy radish strips and platycodon. Obviously, the person who opened it was a member of Lu Bo's group. How could the people at the border know what was inside? Mine is two. One is twice cooked pork, and the other is pickled eggplant strips. Unfortunately, mine doesn't have pickles. Another person shouted happily. Let me see mine. Let me see mine. It's here. Look, ha ha ha, it's my favorite fried pork with garlic. The pickles are pickled cucumbers. It smells like my hometown. The third person was also very happy. Mine is gong bao ji ding. Mine is soft fried pork tenderloin with dipping sauce. Mine is scrambled eggs with chives. I don't like chives. Who can change with me? Mine is pickled eggplant mixed with garlic. Does anyone like garlic? Mine is white meat with winter melon. I gave you garlic. Mine is grilled mutton? Oh, it's not pork. What are you doing? It's pork. Do you dare to hit me? I'll die for you. Here, give me another one. Another person found that his dish was actually mutton, and regretted shouting it out. As a result, many people were not stupid. They immediately grabbed it, and made a gesture of wanting to hit him. He was not afraid. He straightened his neck, and threatened to ask for another one. Anyway, as long as there was one, he didn't have to eat mutton. Lu Bo looked at Shang-Chi and opened his own. After taking a closer look, he helplessly handed it to Shang-Chi and said, Mine is scallion beef tendons. It's cooked beef tendons stir-fried with scallions and coriander. The side dish is ginger fish shredded with shredded ginger and salty sea fish. Let me smell the soup. Seaweed soup. Here, you can eat it. There's no pig in it. Shang-Chi listened, and when Lu Bo passed it to him, he took it without any backbone. He wanted to cry. Was this the rations of the great Tang? The other side came from afar to fight and ate this. On the other hand, they ate stir-fried noodles, which were made by the people at the border. Otherwise, they would always eat stir-fried rice, which was called Highland barley rice in the Great Tang. It was used to feed the animals, and with some salted and dried meat. It was a marching ration. She had never heard of the same dish before. Did she really think that she didn't know what she was doing? This was called a combination of meat and vegetables. The pickles were determined based on one's personal taste. It wasn't a must to eat them. If one didn't want to eat them, they could leave them alone, or exchange with others. Also take some pork. It smelled good. Why didn't the doctrine allow them to eat it? The war was so cowardly. Lu Bo suddenly felt a sense of sympathy. He thought, it's so bitter to eat so many people. You should be occupied by us earlier. We'll let you live a good life. Look at what you soldiers eat. Don't you feel sad? After thinking about it, Lu Bo began to choose the marching ration again. In fact, there were words on the packaging. His people shouted them out to provoke the people who ate many people. Just like the person who said that he didn't like to eat chives. Others might not know you. But how could I not know you? When I went to your house, I saw that your dumplings were full. 4 out of 5 times, they were vegetarian and 3 delicacies. If you don't like to eat them, why did you make them? Did you think that my dumplings didn't have other fillings? I'll exchange with you later. Let's see if you want to exchange. Lu Bo's mood suddenly became cheerful, even though he knew that he was still a hostage. He chose from the box and shouted to Shang-Chi. General Shang-Chi, look, this is something you can eat. Do you want to eat it? Shang-Chi was about to nod when his expression suddenly changed. He laughed and said, There's no hurry. You eat it first. As he spoke, He handed back the marching ration that he had just received. Lu Bo understood. He was afraid that it was poisoned. He took it and ate it. He was not afraid. He knew that the seedling protection team would not make such a stupid plan. They were all elites and could not lack schemers. Since that was the case, if it were him, he would not believe what he ate either. How could he add something to it the first time? That would kill his own people. After happily eating a few mouthfuls, Lu Bo praised loudly. The marching ration of the Zhang family and Wang family is really delicious. Yes, it's delicious. It's better than the food I've eaten in the restaurant before. You can reheat it when it's cold. Another person echoed loudly. I guess he's a chef from between the clouds and the water. Ordinary people can't do that. Another person shouted. Wait. Shang-Chi grabbed Lu Bo's arm and asked. What's the Zhang family and Wang family? It's the Tang Empire army around us. General Shang-Chi, don't you know? I saw it very clearly. There are members of the number 0 seedling protection team, and number 1 seedling protection team of the Zhang family, and the number 1 seedling protection team. They formed a team, and are beside us, waiting for an opportunity. Lu Bo said to Shang-Chi in a daze. Shang-Chi was also stunned. Of course, he knew about the Zhang family and Wang family of Sanshui County of the Tang Empire. Some people said that the Tang Empire would be completely destroyed if they killed people from the two families. As long as Zhang Xiaobao and Wang one of the two families were alive, it would be useless no matter how much land they conquered. As long as they came out personally, the world of the Tang Empire would be peaceful. Now it's their people? At this moment, Shang-Chi did not even have the mood to pray to Allah. He only felt cold all over. He knew too well what the seedling protection team was. It sounded like farming, but in fact, it had nothing to do with farming. That was the seedling protection team. In the past few years, how many people on his side had died in the hands of the seedling protection team? Those with higher positions than him, those with higher positions, were targeted by the seedling protection team and died just like that. Allah seemed to have lost all effect in front of the seedling protection team. Why is it them? Shang-Chi reached out and grabbed Lu Bo, who was still chewing, and asked hatefully. Lu Bo was very happy. He thought to himself, you also know fear? Weren't you very supportive of Niu Qi before? You said that once I'm in your hands, I'll die if you want me to die. If you want me to live, I'll live. Why are you trembling now? Motherfucker, just wait for your death. You think that you did it without anyone noticing. But do you know that Xiao Bao and Cuckoo have arrived in Idyll? You're very contradictory. You think that if you catch me, I alone am not important to the Tang Empire. But you also want to use me to threaten the Tang Empire. But Xiao Bao and Cuckoo are not contradictory. As long as you catch me, they'll definitely send people to rescue me when they get the news, even if it's thousands of li away. You can just wait for your death. If I live, you might live as a slave. If I die, you won't be able to die a quick death even if you want to. Lu Bo was just about to laugh to express his feelings, when he suddenly remembered that there were still people working hard for him. He had to cooperate and ensure that all the hostages were safe. He couldn't be impulsive. He definitely couldn't. Otherwise, he would be letting down Xiao Bao and Cuckoo. Thus, Lu Bo put on a flattering smile and said to Shang-Chi in a gentle voice, General Shang-Chi, there's no need to care about them. They're actually not as powerful as the legends say. Look, we're with you right now, but they're still watching from the side. But I'm really scared, Shang-Chi unconsciously said. It's okay, it's really okay. They just don't want us to die. As long as none of us lose our lives or suffer heavy injuries, they won't do anything unless someone suddenly dies. Lu Bo took this opportunity to comfort Shang-Chi. In fact, his words were very sinister. He was hinting to Shang-Chi that even if one of them fell sick and died, it would be over for Shang-Chi. Shang-Chi, who led hundreds of people, didn't have as much power as a battalion commander in Tang. He didn't have any strategic ideas at all. As for tactics, he was even worse. He felt that he was very lonely. Allah didn't protect him, just like in the era of Zhang Xiaobao and Wang Wan. Those who believed in Allah, other than a portion of China, were bullied like dogs by the United States. At that time, those who believed in Allah had the protection of the China government, but they weren't satisfied and always wanted more benefits. And those who weren't protected by the China government weren't protected by the Russians either. They were their own people. Therefore, those who believed in Allah said that they didn't eat pork, but in fact they lived worse than dogs. Dogs knew how to bark when they saw strangers, but those who believed in Allah just wagged their tails and stuck out their tongues. Now, Shang-Chi had the same feeling. He felt that the God he believed in could no longer protect him. In fact, he wasn't wrong. Just like the Arab countries during that time, they were trampled under the feet of the infidels, but still had to work hard to raise their heads and give a sincere and shameless smile. Those who were not convinced and wanted to have their own dignity were all killed by the United States. The only difference was that China had always been tolerant of their beliefs and religious habits. However, those who left behind a little religious tradition with great difficulty and lived like dog shit didn't know how to be grateful. Instead, they thought that the people of China were weak and easy to bully. Therefore, if they couldn't be pitted, they should be abandoned like dog shit. If not, it would be difficult to walk the right path. If not, how could they be called moral? If they should be killed, they should be killed. If they should be beheaded, they should be beheaded. What kind of dog is it? Fighting for its master. It's hard to tame a wolf after a long time. It's better to spit than to kill. Chapter 1278. The military rations were delicious. Shang-Chi admitted to this point. He kept all the beef and mutton, and gave the pork and chicken to Lu Bo and the others. He didn't want the vegetarian dishes. Although they were vegetarian, there was actually some meat in them. The more the cannibals ate, the more upset they felt. The enemy's weapons were good, because they didn't have the technology. They could only accept that they were at a disadvantage. But why was the logistics better than the enemy's? The war was truly a cowardly one. Lu Bo and the others ate happily. The military rations sounded like they were for the soldiers. But due to the distance, it wasn't easy to preserve, so it should be hard to swallow. Today they truly felt the strength of their country. It turned out that the military rations could be made even more delicious than those in ordinary restaurants. Lu Bo slowly chewed a small piece of pickled cucumber in his mouth. It looked like an ordinary pickled cucumber, but it was marinated in shrimp oil, so it tasted fresh and delicious. He glanced at the 24 subordinates who came with him, and saw that they were all eating slowly. They hadn't eaten anything decent for many days, so the food now had the taste of their homeland. The people at the border didn't get much. 3 people ate 2 portions, and the portion that they didn't get was taken by the cannibals. The 164 people once again considered themselves as Tang people, and no longer felt that they were independent and independent existences. The 164 people whispered to each other, their intentions more or less the same. If they could return alive, they would plant a flag of the Great Tang on their houses to indicate where they belonged. Like many Tang people, when they had nothing to do, they would plant the flag of the Great Tang on their windows and eaves, and some of them would even draw on their walls. The military rations sent over weren't much. Even if they ate slowly, they were finished after half an hour. The cannibals weren't full, and each of them only tasted a mouthful. Thus, they turned their gazes back to the cans. Shang-Chi sucked his fingers. Just now when he ate there were chopsticks. He didn't know how to use them, and the people at the border also didn't know how to use them, but they still learned how to use them. After all, they were Tang people. Even if they didn't learn now, they had to learn if they survived. Otherwise, it would be too embarrassing. You come here. Shang-Chi shouted to Lu Bo. Lu Bo drank the last mouthful of soup, burped, and rubbed his stomach as he walked over. The food was enough for the soldiers, and he hadn't eaten properly for many days, so he ate until he was full. Open the can. Shang-Chi looked at the satisfied expression on Lu Bo's face. He wanted to kill the other party, but at the same time, he thought that if he was also from the Great Tang. Lu Bo burped again, and picked up a can to study it. The acrostic poem was still vivid in his mind. He needed to think about how to open it. Many cans in the country did not have a long shelf life. They were made of bamboo, and the cost was low. Now they were made of iron. He had to read the instructions. Otherwise, it would be troublesome to destroy it directly. The tab. Lu Bo mumbled and stuck a finger into the tab. Thinking that something was wrong, He took it out and pressed the tab in one direction, making a small hole in the can. Then, he hooked the tab again and pulled it in the other direction. A piece of iron fell off, revealing the contents of the can. What is this? Lu Bo was stunned. He had never seen this kind of food before. Fried rice. Covered rice? Why does it smell like there are so many spices? This was not the level of the chef between the clouds and the water, right? Scallions, ginger, and garlic actually accounted for a large proportion of the ingredients. Using seasonings as supplementary ingredients, 3 of the 24 people who came with him came up and looked at the food in the can. They were also confused. One of them could not help but say, "It can't be? What are the chefs of the Zhang family and Wang family planning to do? Was it a revolt? Can this be eaten? Let me open another one. Maybe it was not packed properly when it was packed." Lu Bo took another can and opened it in the same way as before. The inside was still the same as before. Passing the can in front of Shang-Chi, Lu Bo said embarrassedly, "This may be a newly developed food. It is not mature yet. I believe that it will be adjusted after some time. It will be fine to eat it then. The chefs of the Zhang family and Wang family are probably very busy and careless." Yes. Normally, they should not have made it like this really. The person who spoke just now promised. It seemed that the chefs of the Zhang family and Wang family had made the food like this. And they were also embarrassed. Shang-Chi put the can in front of his nose and smelled it. He nodded. "It tastes good. It is better than what we ate before we came. Call someone over and let's eat." He called someone over from the border. He was afraid that it was poisonous. If someone was poisoned to death, it would have nothing to do with him. He thought that the Miao protection team would not be covered by artillery. As hostages, Lu Bo and the other 25 people suddenly felt a sense of superiority. Pig food was actually praised. It was really sad to live a polyphagous life. No wonder many polyphagous people were willing to come to the Tang Empire in the past. They enjoyed a different life. The 25 people thought so, but no one took the initiative to try it. What if it was really poisonous? 5 people from the border were called over. They opened 3 more cans, 1 for each person, and let them eat. The 5 people held the cans and looked at them. Seeing that the polyphagous people wanted to come over, one of them immediately said, "Give me the chopsticks just now. I will eat. Use your hands." Shang-Chi was not used to this. If he used his hands to grab, why couldn't they grab? Why did they have to use chopsticks? It was infuriating. The 5 of them obeyed and reached out to grab the contents of the can. They pinched a little with 3 fingers and carefully put it into their mouths. They chewed twice, blinked their eyes, smacked their lips, and immediately reached out to grab the can again. They ate quickly. They ate about 20 mouthfuls in a row. They looked at each other and were relieved to see that they were all alive. "Wait a minute. What do you think?" Shang-Chi stopped them and asked one of them. The person who was asked nodded vigorously. "It's delicious. It would be better if there was less ginger. Do you feel uncomfortable anywhere?" Lu Bo also asked. The 5 people shook their heads. Lu Bo pondered and opened another can. He reached out to grab it, but one of the people who came with him snatched it. "Boss, I will go first." After saying that, he began to eat. After 2 mouthfuls, a smile appeared on his face. "I knew it. The food made by the Zhang family and Wang family chefs can't be bad. I don't feel that there is too much ginger and too much pepper. It's not like I'm drinking mutton soup." Shang-Chi was tempted. He hesitated, but still insisted on not eating. He let the 5 people finish the food in the can. Everyone surrounded the 5 people to see their reactions. I still want to eat," one of the 5 people said eagerly. Lu Bo stopped him. "Don't be in a hurry. You have been hungry for too long. If you suddenly eat too much, it will cause problems. Do you want to drink water?" "Drink." The 5 people really wanted to eat. Their stomachs were always hungry. Someone brought a water bag, and each person drank a few mouthfuls. They sat on the ground and waited to see if they were still alive. The shadows of the 5 people gradually grew longer. Nothing happened to the 5 people. Instead, they digested the food and were no longer hungry. They sat there with a happy smile on their faces, enjoying the feeling of being full under the sun. "Eat." Half of the people eat first. Shang-Chi saw that the person who tasted the food was still alive and well. He waved his hand and ordered. The many people were anxious. Immediately, half of them stood out and opened the can like how Lu Bo did before. They reached out and stuffed the food into their mouths. There was no smell of pork in the mixed food. They could taste that it was made of mutton oil and some mutton. With all kinds of seasonings, they ate until their stomachs felt warm. After each of them ate 2 cans in a row, the others continued to wait under Shang-Chi's order. The clouds in the sky floated and flew away. Another hour passed. The many people who ate the can were still alive. The 5 people who tasted the can were also fine. Lu Bo thought for a while and said to Shang-Chi, "General Shang-Chi, eat. The protection team won't poison you. They know that you will let us try first. If they poison us, they will poison us. They are here to rescue you, not to harm you. It's just that you have to be careful in the process of meeting up with the main force on your side. They will keep shooting from the back." Shang-Chi was happy when he heard the first part. But when he heard the second part, his face turned gloomy. According to the Tang people, it was impossible to stop halfway. They didn't dare to kill to test the water. When they were rushing, the other party would shoot, and they would have to walk for a few days. What should he do? Should he discuss with the other party and let them go so that they wouldn't attack? No, if it were him, he would immediately chase after them. Should he tell them that he would kill one of them? It would be useless. They dared to shoot yesterday. Eat. Shang-Chi, who couldn't think of a good idea, gritted his teeth and took a can to eat. The other half of the people who didn't eat just now also opened the can as fast as they could. When it was in his mouth, Shang-Chi knew why the people who ate just now had that kind of expression. It was so delicious. Although it was cold, the food inside didn't make people feel disgusted. When it entered the stomach, there was a warm feeling, as if the whole body was full of strength. When they were full, there were only 21 cans left in the woods. Shang-Chi naturally kept the rest of the cans for himself. After a short rest, he let the hostages stand up and tie them firmly. 2 people with knives were behind each of them. They surrounded their own people and continued to move forward. After walking for a while, they saw a small river. The water was clear, and they could see the stones and small fish swimming below. The crowd cheered. There was water. Lu Bo squatted down and dipped his hands in the water. He washed his face first before drinking a mouthful. He requested Shang-Chi, "Let us take a bath and change our clothes." The 24 people who came with him looked at Shang-Chi. They were here to do business, so they naturally had to bring things. Everyone brought an extra set of clothes and toiletries. They were confiscated before, but Lu Bo went to curry favor with the great Tang trader and was rewarded back. They hadn't been used since. The main reason was that many people were not used to wearing clothes, and using other toiletries was also unfamiliar. Shang-Chi nodded and asked, "There's no poison in the water? How much poison is in the flowing water?" "Don't worry." Lu Bo revealed a flattering smile and shamelessly tried to curry favor with the great Tang. He did this to survive and create opportunities for the seedling protection team. However, Wang Miao, who was watching from afar, pursed his lips tightly. He had already received news from the country and understood Lu Bo's family situation. He was a pretty good businessman. He had 2 wives and 7 children. His parents were still alive, and he was still supporting the parents of 2 of his wives. The grandfather of one of his wives was still alive, and he was as respectful as he was to his own grandfather. His family had large courtyards in the capital, Hangzhou, Suzhou, Idyll and Luoyang. He was smart since young, and he took over the family business at the age of 16. He got along well with the local officials. He had no criminal record and never gave money to the local schools. However, he opened a small book printing company that specialized in printing books for children and gave them out free of charge. 5 years ago, he found that this business route was more profitable, so he brought people here to do business. His family mainly dealt in leather, and later on, they added medicinal herbs and sold them to the clinic. He could be considered a pretty wealthy businessman and lived a good life. His family was harmonious, and he was kind to others. He didn't take loans from banks, and his family had a lot of cash. However, he was willing to give the clinic credit for medicinal herbs. He was also talented. He was proficient in 6 foreign languages and had good calligraphy skills. He also liked painting and often invited scholars to hold poetry gatherings. He was very good to his employees and had a relatively high charisma. Usually, he was neither servile nor overbearing when he met the officials, but now, he was like a dog trying to please its owner. Wang Miao felt very uncomfortable. He felt that he didn't do a good job. Every smile of Lu Bo's was like a knife stabbing into his chest. He picked up the sniper rifle beside him and shot down the other party's leader, but he didn't dare to do so. After threatening the other party, he actually felt a little guilty. Fortunately, he found that the other party was illiterate. Not only did they not recognize the great Tang's words, but they also didn't recognize their own words. The school was very important and could play a life-saving role at a critical moment. Wang Miao looked and estimated the time it would take for the people here to meet up with the main forces. He also estimated the time when he would release the spiked cans. He decided not to shoot at the other party during this process. At most, he would shoot at the sky to slow down the troops. If he killed one of the other party, and the other party retaliated by killing one of his own people, should he open fire or not? Putting away his binoculars, Wang Miao gritted his teeth and said, "If only I knew what the other party's leader was thinking. Just wait. You'll all cry." The speed of the many people was just as Wang Miao had expected. They slowed down and placed a portion of the hostages outside, constantly changing their positions. The other people hid behind the hostages and mixed in with the rest of the hostages, so that the great Tang army wouldn't shoot at the rat for fear of breaking the vases. As night fell, the many people were exhausted. None of them were killed during the day, but the psychological pressure was even greater. They knew that there were countless eyes watching them and looking for an opportunity to kill them. They were nervous when they were walking during the day, and they didn't dare to relax at night. The torches and bonfires burned, making crackling sounds from time to time. Every time there was a crackling sound, it made people worried that it was the sound of gunshots. When it was time for dinner, the many people began to miss the days in the day. They ate canned food in the day, and now they had to eat the stir-fried barley at night. It was really hard to swallow. Without so many seasonings and delicious salted vegetables, they could only force themselves to swallow. Tonight, the hostages didn't have any food. The many people felt that they had eaten a lot at noon and could starve a little. Lu Bo's 25 people were gathered together and had relatively more freedom. The many people standing outside the tent were their own world. "Drink some water. We'll probably have something to eat tomorrow morning." Lu Bo was also hungry. He rubbed his stomach and said to his subordinates. He picked up the water bag and gulped down a few mouthfuls to make his stomach feel less empty. "Why didn't they send us anything to eat at night?" A person hugged the water bag and mumbled when he didn't feel like drinking. "I'm not sure." Lu Bo shook his head. He wasn't complaining, but he was puzzled. Logically speaking, since the protection team had found them, they should have sent them something to eat. Now that the many people had finished eating, they were still hungry. Midnight came quietly when everyone was hungry and nervous. The sound of a gunshot broke the silence of the night. The duo eater on night watch was shocked and looked around to see who had been killed. The fire was still burning, and the dark clouds were rolling in the sky. The moon and stars could not be seen, making people feel oppressed. Shang-Chi, who was sleeping in his clothes, walked out of the tent under the protection of a few people. He asked loudly who died. After a while someone came to report, No one died. Should we go and get something? Where did the gunshot come from?" Shang-Chi listened and his stomach felt empty again. "Over there." Someone pointed in a direction. There was a mountain, and the gunshot was echoing, making it difficult to distinguish. "Take the hostages and take a look," Shang-Chi ordered. Someone came and called the hostages to the place where the gunshot came from. The hostages woke up. They were awakened by the gunshot. It didn't take long for the people who went to check to return. As expected, they were carrying something. It was still a wooden box. Inside it was some military food and some canned food. There were exactly 189 canned food. It seemed like they had prepared one for each of the hostages. However, there were only 200 canned food. It definitely wasn't enough for the mini people. Shang-Chi didn't need to look to know that the food was filled with pork. It was specially prepared for the hostages. The 200 canned food was for his side. Wake them up and let them eat. If they don't let me sleep well, I won't let them sleep well either, Shang-Chi ordered. Lu Bo and the others were woken up. They came out of the tent in a daze and saw the food under the light of the torch. They were all very happy. There was food to eat, but the timing was too good. Why did it only arrive in the middle of the night? General Shang-Chi, thank you, thank you. Can I eat? Lu Bo ran to Shang-Chi and bowed repeatedly. Eat and sleep well. We have to hurry tomorrow. Shang-Chi didn't want them to eat, but he was worried that it would affect their stamina. He could only agree gloomily. He also picked up a can and was about to eat when he suddenly stopped and passed it to Lu Bo. I'll add a can for you. You eat first. Yes. Lu Bo took it and started to eat. He knew that the many people wanted him to test the poison. They were really cautious. While eating, he looked at the words on the can. It was written in a different style. It said, delivering food in the middle of the night. Because of the long journey, it is difficult to transport. Peacefully wait for the clouds to disperse. Like the sun like before. After seeing the words, Lu Bo's legs trembled. He knew that the time to act was 3 days later. The limerick on the can wasn't written clearly, but he knew. Because he remembered that before he came here, he held a poetry party. Someone wrote a poem, and everyone commented. When it was his turn, he said, like the sun, like the moon rising. Looking at the words and reading the shape, it was a good poem. Then, today's limerick said that food was delivered in the middle of the night, followed by like the sun like before. It was telling him the time to act. Lu Bo ate and sighed in his heart. It was too amazing. In just one day, they found out everything and used it to send a message on the can. How much resources did Xiao Bao and Cuckoo mobilize? Otherwise, it would be impossible to find out so clearly. 3 days, there were still 3 days. He had to hold on. If he didn't put Shang-Chi in a cage by then, his name would be written upside down. No, it would be written horizontally. Shang-Chi watched Lu Bo eat and continued to wait. He wanted to find a few more people to test the poison, but he didn't want to. If there was no poison, his people would eat less. Chapter 1279. When he returned to the tent, Lu Bo was still in a state of excitement. He said to his 24 subordinates, Eat and rest well. Do your best for General Shang-Chi. His subordinates knew what he meant. Why would they do anything for Shang-Chi? One of them wrote on the ground, Are you going to do it? Don't ask. Don't affect your mood and be detected. Lu Bo also wrote. The 24 nodded and began to fill the ration with water. Lu Bo had not filled his own ration yet. He had just eaten canned food. Today's canned food tasted a little bitter, but it did not make him feel uncomfortable. The only thing he felt was that he was a little confused, probably because he was too nervous, and also because he had woken up in the middle of the night. Lu Bo secretly swore that when he returned to China, he would do his job well. He would listen to the imperial court and Xiao Bao and be a proper businessman. He would not cheat or harm others. It was not only because of his attachment to his motherland, but also because he had to remember what happened today. Since they could find out his identity and communicate with him to save him in a day. If he made a mistake, they could also find out and deal with him in a day. It was no wonder that the top businessmen in the list were so reliable. After the war, they worked together to stabilize the domestic product prices. It was probably because they knew more about Xiao Bao and Cuckoo. It was too scary. Efficiency, this was efficiency. When Xiao Bao and Cuckoo became serious and started to mobilize resources, the result would be the same as now. It smells like medicine. One of the people eating the ration was really hungry. As soon as the ration was heated, he could not wait to open it. The strong smell of medicine wafted into the tent. When the others heard his voice, they turned to look and sniffed. Sure enough, there was medicine. There was really medicine. Let me see. Jujube, wolfberry, angelica, Rehmannia, and some slices are ginseng? The meat dish is braised pork ribs, and the vegetarian dish is braised shrimps with chives. There are no salted vegetables today. Another person recognized many herbs and immediately read them out loud. Mine is the same. Mine too. Looks like today's meal is the same. That's right. The others opened their own rations and found that the dishes were not as messy as last time. They were all the same things. Lu Bo took a look and nodded. Start giving us nourishment and let us nourish our bodies. What is soup? Let me take a sip and see. It's delicious. It's not soup, it's porridge. Rock sugar, hay, and mung bean porridge. I know. They're afraid that we'll get heat stroke, but they're also worried that we'll be too nourishing after eating this dish. They've put in a lot of effort to adjust us with mild porridge. The person who spoke at the beginning sighed. Shang-Chi stood outside the tent. The other hostages did not have tents. Only Lu Bo and 25 people were squeezed into one tent. The other hostages rested in the open with ropes tied to their bodies. When he heard the words of the real Tang in the tent, his lips twitched, but then he helplessly shook his head. He lowered his head and looked at the can in his hand. He sighed, opened it, and ate it with his hands. The people following him also heard the voices in the tent. Although some of them understood the great Tang language and couldn't speak it properly, they could still understand it. All of them swallowed their saliva. They really wanted to eat it. What kind of pork couldn't they eat? It didn't smell any worse than beef and mutton. Moreover, they felt that the pork was even more delicious when it was made by someone else. He didn't understand why the church's teachings forbade him from eating pigs. If he secretly ate some, eat the can. Don't think too much. Shang-Chi was the first to be tempted. He was also thinking about how he could secretly eat the pork. Seeing the expressions of his subordinates, how could he not know what they were thinking? He softly warned them. It's a little bitter. A guard ate 2 mouthfuls of the food in the can and smacked his lips as he spoke. Eat it. It won't kill you. You smell their military rations. It's also bitter. They probably put the leftover seasoning in the military rations into the can. Shang-Chi also felt that today's can was bitter. However, when he smelled the smell drifting over, he found that it was not much different from the bitter taste. He believed that the great Tang people had used leftover seasoning in the cans for them. Fortunately, there was no smell of pork. However, there was one point that was acceptable. The few guards who were eating the can nodded. It was fine if it was bitter. It didn't affect the taste. It was still delicious. Lu Bo could hear their conversation. He felt that things weren't so simple. As for the leftover seasoning in the can, what a joke. What kind of leftover seasoning was bitter? The bitterness of the braised pork ribs was because of the sugar color and the ginseng. Why would they put ginseng in the can? Although ginseng was a man-made product of the Zhang family and Wang family, it could also be used to treat diseases. If it wasn't used to save lives, it would be the same as the wild ginseng. At most, it would be used to increase the quantity of the medicine. Why would such a good thing be used as leftover seasoning? You guys think too highly of yourselves. Xiao Bao and Cuckoo can't wait to deal with you guys personally. Why would they use ginseng and specially fry it with sugar color? Did they really think that the sugar color was just a simple color? Wouldn't it be better to use soy sauce? The caramel itself was a medicine. There's a problem. There's a problem with the food today. What's wrong? Lu Bo was more and more certain of his guess. Normally, the handheld canned food couldn't be bitter. Since they said that they would take action 3 days later, the pork ribs that were delivered today also tasted a little bitter. It was just enough to make people feel that today's food was normal. Coincidence? Coincidence? If it was someone else, it might be. However, it was definitely impossible for the Zhang family and Wang family. There must be some scheme. Lu Bo couldn't figure out what was going on at the moment, but he had a plan in his mind. Shang-Chi was very satisfied with the food. He was the leader of hundreds of people. Where did he learn so many schemes and tricks? He also thought that it was normal. Anyway, it was fine as long as he didn't have to eat the military rations that he brought. What if no one sent him canned food in the future? He didn't think too much about it. He was leading a group of people to fight alone. The other party was using the entire system to deal with him. They were playing a team game with him. After eating one canned food, he was still hungry. He asked someone to bring him another one. He opened it and ate again. It was better to pour water on the military rations to heat them up. The canned food was cold. Roast it? No, can I roast the food inside and cook it? That's too troublesome. How can there be so many pots? Just eat, make do with it. Shang-Chi looked enviously at the other hostages, who were eating the military rations in the open air. He muttered and ate again. A total of 200 canned food was delivered. Lu Bo ate one, Shang-Chi ate one more, and the others ate one less. As they ate, Shang-Chi got angry and shouted in the night. Tomorrow, I want you to send us 1,200 canned food tomorrow. We have to make sure that each person gets two. The others followed suit. They had more than 500 people, and less than 600 people. If they sent 2 canned food for each person, it would be exactly 1,200. That was what they thought. They couldn't help it. They couldn't even read their own language. It was too difficult for them to calculate more than 1,000. Normally, there were less than 600 people. With 1,200 canned food, each person would get 2. Who would get the rest? Shang-Chi could calculate. He wanted to digest the food in his stomach. He would eat one, and give the rest to those who performed well as a reward. The next day, when the sun had risen for some distance, gunshots came from the forest. Shang-Chi immediately ordered people to take the hostages to take a look. As expected, food was delivered again, and the amount of canned food had obviously increased. Come here and see how many there are. Shang-Chi counted with difficulty, and found Lu Bo counted 50 cans in a box. He counted 24 cans in another box. He said to Shang-Chi, 1,200. How did you count so fast? Shang-Chi was puzzled. General, you're here. If I had divine help, it would really be 1,200. Unless the amount of cans in each box is different. Lu Bo endured the disgust in his heart and flattered himself. He comforted himself and held on for 2 more days. It was still Lu Bo's turn to taste the food. He felt that he was really smart. He didn't eat the military ration yesterday. Otherwise, he would be full until he went to bed at night. Those who ate the military ration would not be able to digest it completely. Bitter. Lu Bo felt that the canned food was really bitter. It seemed to be even more bitter than yesterday. At the same time, it added a little sweetness and spiciness. There was actually chili. This way, the bitterness would not be felt unless one paid special attention. There was indeed a problem. Lu Bo finished eating and stood there to stretch his body. After waiting for a quarter of an hour, he was fine. Shang-Chi waved his hand, and his subordinates came to get 2 cans each. Lu Bo was in charge of distributing them. At noon, there were still 1,200 cans. At the same time, the military ration was added. Today's meat dish was twice-cooked pork, and the vegetable dish was egg-fried garlic. The soup was still changed to rock sugar hay and mung bean porridge. This time, Lu Bo ate it. He realized that the amount of licorice in the porridge had increased. This was used to detoxify the poison. No wonder the canned food was bitter. What was in it? It seemed to be fine. At night, they would be given canned food. At midnight, they would be given supper. Just like that, all the poly-eaters began to wait for the time to eat. Lu Bo was also looking forward to eating the canned food. He felt that eating the canned food would be very comfortable. His body would be very relaxed, and he would not feel bitter anymore. Sometimes he would even look at Tion, or after eating and feel that life was so beautiful. On the second night, when he felt that way, Lu Bo became alert. He had been in charge of tasting the canned food. Although he didn't eat as much as the poly-eaters, he didn't think that the canned food was better than the military ration. Then why was he looking forward to it so much? He was addicted. He was definitely addicted. After 2 days, he was addicted to the canned food. What was in it? It was no wonder that he didn't need to wait for a quarter of an hour to taste the canned food. The poly-eaters would immediately follow suit. Tomorrow was the 3rd day, and the amount in the canned food would probably be increased. Then, after eating for the whole day, he would have supper at midnight. Around midnight in the morning, Lu Bo deduced that the attack in 3 days was referring to the early morning of the 4th day. As for the Last Supper, would he be poisoned to death? Most likely not. Otherwise, why would they make a move? They could just kill him with the medicine. Then it was most likely that they would drug him. Alright, I'll go all out. Hopefully, I won't be unconscious for too long, and they will be able to wake me up in time. Lu Bo muttered to himself. He closed his eyes and began to rest. The wonderful feeling of eating the canned food filled his heart again. On the morning of the third day, Lu Bo carefully tasted the canned food and found that the amount in the canned food had been increased. This meant that he would be even more addicted. When the time came, he would have to quit. It was really painful. That was a drug addiction. Fine, he would have to be strong when the time came. Everything was for Tang. Chapter 1280. The canned food was getting more and more fragrant, and the people who had eaten it were looking forward to the next meal. After eating it, they would become more energetic. On the third night, after Lu Bo finished the canned food, he went back to the tent to eat with his subordinates. He didn't eat the food immediately, but used chopsticks to distribute it to his subordinates. Then, he tried not to make any sound of vomiting, and vomited out more than half of the canned food. He didn't dare to vomit all out, because he was afraid that it would affect his mental state. He knew that he was starting to like the feeling of being addicted to drugs. If he vomited all of it, he might become depressed. The 24 people watched their boss vomit, and felt that something was wrong. Was their boss not feeling well? Was it poisonous? When Lu Bo vomited the food into the packaging of the military beam, the subordinate closest to him began to write on the ground. "What's wrong?" Lu Bo followed and wrote, "Don't make a sound. It's okay. Leave some porridge for me." His subordinate nodded, and began to praise the military food to cover his writing. "It's poisonous, addictive poison. It's probably the poppy reported in the newspaper. Don't eat too much tonight. Get ready." After Lu Bo finished writing, he nodded solemnly to his subordinates. The 24 people took a deep breath almost at the same time, and then held the air in their lungs. Their faces were full of nervousness. "Can you quit?" A subordinate wrote worriedly. "You have to quit even if you can't," Lu Bo wrote. The 24 people nodded, and no longer made any other unnecessary movements. They began to eat their own military food. They didn't feel disgusted at all when they saw their boss vomit. Now was a moment of life and death, and all thoughts that shouldn't be had should be abandoned. At the same time, they were very clear about what the poppy was. It had been reported more than once in the newspaper, introducing the shape of the poppy. There were specially carved pictures and colored pigments separately. When the poppy flower bloomed, it was very beautiful. It was red, pink, and white. If one looked at it in the middle, it would make people feel happy. The newspaper also introduced how poppy was made into opium paste. It was the white paste that appeared when the head was destroyed. It was simple to boil. The biggest use was to be used in medicine. So if someone wanted to plant it, they could plant it, but they were not allowed to eat it themselves. After planting and looking at the flowers, they had to send it to the medical center, and the medical center would use it to make medicine. If they found that they ate it themselves, they would be killed. If they found that they put it in food for others to eat, and cause others to become addicted, they would be killed. The 24 of them knew that the boss had planted quite a lot of them. They looked very beautiful when they bloomed, especially the gourd, which looked very interesting. However, they didn't eat it. Although it could be used as medicine, it was free of charge to see a doctor. Even if they didn't feel well, they would go to the clinic instead of eating it in private in order to save money. The newspaper even wrote about the adverse effects of addiction after eating it. It warned the people of the Great Tang that in order to have a healthy body to earn more money for their family, in order to have a healthy body to create more wealth for their country, and in order to make their country richer and stronger, they should not try to eat that thing. Otherwise, they would be irresponsible to the Great Tang, irresponsible to their family, and betraying their country. Out of the 24 people, no one had ever eaten it. Even if they did plant it, they would just look at the flowers. Then, they would bring it to the medical center, and let the medical center make it into medicine to treat diseases. The medical center would not give them a single copper coin, so they could not sell it. Since it was reported in the newspaper, they were clear about the situation their boss was in. He was addicted, and it would take a lot of effort to kick it. Therefore, when they looked at their boss, their eyes were filled with encouragement. Lu Bo glared at them and thought, "I'm not going to die, so why are you so sad?" The supper was more unbearable. "I don't know if I'll faint." At the same time, he glanced at the tent. because the light outside was brighter than inside the tent. When looking from a distance, the shadows of the people outside would fall on the tent. Only when they were close could they see the shadows of the people inside the tent, and it was very blurry. Lu Bo felt sad for the people who ate more food, the result of having no knowledge. If you all went to school when you were young, and if your school taught you some words and knowledge of the great Tang, how could you fall into the trap so easily? Why did I have to print books for the children in school to read? This was the power of knowledge. Shang-Chi, who was eating happily outside, did not know that the person who tested the poison was cursing them in the tent. He only felt that the canned food today was even more satisfying. After eating it, from top to bottom, from inside to outside, there was not a single place where he felt uncomfortable. Although the sky was gloomy tonight, breathing after eating the canned food was very pleasant. Listening to the voices coming from the tent from time to time, his mouth revealed a smile, and his whole body was relaxed. Shang-Chi had already made a decision. As long as he could meet up with the rest of the troops, he would definitely keep the person called Lu Bo. This person knew a lot, could speak both languages, and could read both languages. If he kept him by his side, maybe his status would be improved. When he had more power, he could give Lu Bo more benefits. Gems, women, wine, all were not a problem. The half-moon shyly hid behind the dark clouds. Occasionally, when the wind blew, a trace of light would appear in the gaps of the dark clouds, but it would quickly hide back again. The torches in the camp flickered, and the tent made a sound as it was blown by the wind. Lu Bo and the other 25 people were counting sheep while sleeping. This was also what they learned from the newspaper. When they were suffering from insomnia, they should try not to take medicine. They could use something to cover their eyes, and then count sheep. They also imagined that they were on the grassland, where the sky was high, the clouds were light, and the grass was green and the flowers were red. They thought that counting would make them fall asleep quickly. Only when it did not work would they go to the clinic to get medicine to eat. Many people were not in the mood to sleep. They felt that sleeping in this kind of weather was a waste of time, so they sang and danced. All kinds of sounds mixed together and rippled in the night sky. Many of the people at the border, who were taken hostage, felt that the situation today was not right. The cannibals were too happy, Lu Bo and the others were too quiet in the tent, and the dark clouds in the sky made it hard for people to breathe. They occasionally looked at each other and felt that something was going to happen. They did not know why they had this idea, but everything around them looked strange. In the middle of the night, the sound of gunshots rang out. The people who did not sleep much brought the food back with the hostages. As usual, Lu Bo ate it. He had just eaten 2 mouthfuls of the canned food, and the people did not wait to see his reaction. They opened the canned food and stuffed it into their mouths. Today Lu Bo ate very quickly. He did not chew at all and directly swallowed. Then he stood there motionless. He was doing the opposite of what was described in the newspaper. The newspaper said that people who did not absorb and digest well had to chew carefully when eating, and try to chew the food as much as possible. This way, when it entered the stomach acid could come into contact with the food better and quickly decompose it. Drinking a little soup while eating and strolling after the meal was also a good choice. However, Lu Bo did not intend to let himself absorb the canned food quickly. He decided to spit it all out when he entered the tent later. As for the people who were eating, he did not care. Just eat. It was delicious. Eat more. At the same time, Lu Bo also decided that after he went, he would specially ask people to collect all kinds of common knowledge in life, and then send articles to the Tang newspaper. Or, he would also write a small daily newspaper and introduce all kinds of useful tips and knowledge to the people of Tang. No wonder there is a page dedicated to such things every time. It turns out that it can save lives at critical moments. Usually when I read such pages in the newspaper, it was just for entertainment. But now I know how important these little wisdom are. Xiao Bao and Cuckoo are really gods. Lu Bo sighed. When knowledge was not used, no one would think that it was very useful. But when it was needed, it was so convenient and useful. When the people who were eating the second can of canned food, Lu Bo returned to the tent. Under the cover of his subordinates, he quietly spat out the food in his stomach again. Then he drank a lot of water and continued to spit it out. After several times, his subordinates passed him the porridge and asked him to drink a few mouthfuls to prevent the stomach acid and bile from burning the gastric mucosa with an empty stomach. After drinking a few mouthfuls of porridge, Lu Bo went to sleep. He was afraid that after he spat out the drugs, his body would feel uncomfortable if it was not replenished. Sleeping would relieve this feeling. He hoped that the cycle of the body's need for drugs would be longer and would not be the same as the cycle of eating. After the people who were eating supper, they were very excited at first. After about half an hour, they all looked tired. Shang-Chi immediately ordered them to rest and decided not to sing and dance after dinner tomorrow night. If they were tired, it would affect the battle. There were still enemies around. Maybe the enemies could not help but suddenly attack at any time. The people who were eating went to the tent to rest, leaving only the sentries to guard the camp and the hostages. All kinds of insects were chirping. The clouds in the sky seemed to be darker and denser. For a long time, there was no trace of moonlight. When it was time to change the sentries, the people who should have gotten up quickly were pushed many times. Only then did they wake up and drag their heavy footsteps to the sentry post. The original sentries fell asleep as soon as they entered the tent. In fact, they had fallen asleep just now. It was just that they could not sleep well standing up, so they forced themselves to stay awake until now. The new sentries stood for a while and fell asleep not long after. The people outside could not see the hidden sentries, but they could hear the snoring. The people who were tied up at the junction were all dumbfounded. They looked at the people who were usually very energetic and would occasionally come to scold them. Why did they all fall asleep today? If that was the case, who would be the sentries? For a moment they were tempted. Since no one was on the lookout, could they, just as two people were about to move, they were immediately whispered by a relatively older person, "Don't move. Sleep honestly. Squeeze, squeeze, squeeze." It was said to be squeezy because they lived outside. Even if it was raining, no one would prepare tents for them. The main thing was that there were only so many tents. It was not easy to save one for Lu Bo and the others. As for the reason, of course, it was because Lu Bo could help them calculate and come up with ideas. Once again, it proved the importance of knowledge. Even if you were a prisoner, even if you were a hostage, as long as you could prove that you were good at what you had learned, your survival environment and chances of survival would be far greater than those who were inferior to you. The people at the junction did not enjoy the treatment of tents. When it was sunny, it was fine. At most, there would be mosquito harassment. If it was raining, it would be very cold at night. They could only squeeze together. It was very difficult to go to the toilet. They had to wake others up together and tie each other up. Today, the moon was covered by dark clouds. The wind was strong, and the night was cold. Moreover, the humidity was heavy. They did not sleep well. If one person moved, the person tied up nearby would wake up. They did not know why, but it was cold and energetic tonight. It seemed that they had become excited after eating the military rations. When people were excited, they would always think about things that they should not think about. Now, some people felt that the opportunity had come. Bite the rope and we can run out. The soldiers who saved us must be around. If we meet them, we will live. The person who was shouted at was not willing to give up and said excitedly, "What about the people in the tent? You go and call them? They are surrounded by the other tents. They woke up the people who eat more. They will kill people." The elder whispered, "Ignore them. Let's run out first." The young man had a good plan. The elder sneered, "They are real people of the Great Tang. We don't have a household registration yet. If we run out at the cost of exposing them, how will the soldiers of the Great Tang treat us? If one of them dies, we will all die with them." The people nearby who heard the commotion nodded. Did the Great Tang send elite soldiers to kill their own people? Who knew who was close and who was distant? We are also people of the Great Tang. The young man muttered, "Let's talk about it after we are saved. When we are registered, we will have to listen to the words of the Great Tang Emperor. There is also that Xiaobao and Cuckoo. In the past 2 days, Xiaobao and Cuckoo are very powerful. The people who came back were sent by them. They are the most powerful team that the Great Tang can send. Other than here, Only the great Tang Emperor has them. Everyone don't move. Wait and trust them. Even the most powerful great Tang soldiers forced the people of the great Tang to take us as hostages. How can the most powerful people be weak? The elder threatened and boosted the confidence of the people on his side. He was afraid that some of them would be impulsive and kill Lu Bo. If his own people were exposed, he would kill them too. Some people who were ready to make a move spread the news to each other, but all of them restrained themselves. They didn't want to be killed by the great Tang soldiers after running out. At night, the people of the great Tang changed shifts every 2 hours. In the past it was 4 hours. Later on it was 3 hours. Now it was 1 hour. They were worried that if they stood for too long, it would give the Tang army a chance to attack them when they were tired. After eating it would be past midnight. So if they stood for 2 hours, it would be past midnight. Now those who had just been replaced had to stand until midnight. In other words, it was around 3 o'clock. Midnight was 3:30 o'clock. If it was 4:30 o'clock, it was 4:30 o'clock. 3:30 o'clock was the wee hours of the morning. Even the people who sold breakfast were not willing to get up. Generally, they would wait until 4 o'clock before getting up to prepare. When they finished setting up their stalls and started making breakfast, it would be around 5 o'clock. At this time, dawn was relatively early, but because of the different locations, it would not be dawn until after 6 o'clock. If it was in the northern part of Hebei province, it would be dawn early. Of course, it would be dark later. The people at the border were waiting for the arrival of a new day. They also hoped that the great Tang soldiers would quickly rescue them. If it weren't for the great Tang soldiers coming over to replenish their food, some people would not have been able to hold on and died. Although it had only been a little more than 3 days. If not for the things that had been sent to them previously, these 3 days might have been the last time they could hold on. If they waited for a larger group to gather, at least 1/3 of them would have died. They had already used up a lot of stamina and nutrition before this. Time passed slowly in the hearts of the people at the border. They waited and finally, it was 12 o'clock in the morning. Some people were very clear about the time. They could tell the approximate time based on their instincts. Now they were waiting to see more people change shifts. In the end, the people of the Great Tang who should have taken the initiative to change shifts were still sleeping at their posts, and no one came out of their tents. The eyes of the people living at the border lit up. They did not know why, but they were not sleepy. They looked at the sky. When the dark clouds were rolling in, the moonlight that occasionally peeked out was already leaning towards the west. Just a little more time, and the sun in the east would be the first to shine. Although the sun did not appear, the sky in the west would be able to illuminate a little. Are they all sleeping? No one is changing shifts. Then what about the special forces of the Great Tang? Stupid. Hurry up and come out. Opportunity, a good opportunity. Just as they were cursing in their hearts, countless black shadows suddenly appeared under the moonlight after the dark clouds had just dispersed. They were stunned for a moment, and in a moment of joy, a figure appeared beside the person at the sentry post closest to them. They didn't know how the figure moved, but the figure stopped and then moved. They watched as the person gently placed the duogan on the sentry post on the ground. Then, there was the sound of popping, and soon, everything returned to normal. Before they could think about it, several large patches of light suddenly shone down from the sky. They could not help but look up and see 4 large objects floating in the sky. The light was coming from those 4 objects. Then, more small beams of light shone from the figures. There was not a single gunshot, not a single shout. Only someone came to help them cut the ropes. Less than 7 minutes later, they heard someone speak. Reporting, all the enemies are under control. All the sentry posts have been killed. Requesting action. Action. Don't move. Don't move. Clap, clap. Put your hands on your head and lie on the ground. A cacophony of voices began to appear, and all the voices were of the Great Tang, and even some local dialects of the Great Tang. Shouts, footsteps, and gunshots mixed together. The beams of light from the objects flying in the sky swept back and forth. Another 7 minutes later, the noise died down again. The Great Tang, who were still sleepy, were escorted out one by one and gathered in the open space of the camp with guns pointed at them. When the great Tang saw that there were more of them, there was a slight commotion. A series of gunshots rang out. No great Tang was killed, but everyone became obedient. They knew that the thing that was making the continuous sounds was a machine gun. The people at the border were still in a daze. They did not know how the battle had started, or what was going on in the tent. In any case, all the great Tang were under control, and the sentry had been killed. The ropes binding them had been cut, but they did not say anything. They just stood there and watched. Everything they saw was full of wonder, especially in the sky. What was flying? The attack speed was too fast. They thought that there would be a fierce battle. After all, there were nearly 600 great Tang. How could they be caught in such a short time? Area A5 is safe. Area A6 is safe. Area B1 is safe. One voice after another reported that they were safe. Gather the troops. The medical team is landing. Another voice sounded. The people on the objects flying in the sky started to slide down the ropes quickly. Every time, two people slid down, one holding the other. The speed of the fall was very fast. When they were about to hit the ground, they suddenly slowed down and landed on the ground. Lu Bo and the other 25 people walked out of the tent and stood in the open space outside. Someone went up and saluted. This is Wang Miao, the commander of the vigorous protection team, codenamed Wu Yi. I'm here to report that you are safe. After that, the person who called himself Wang Miao shook Lu Bo's hand and said, "It's been hard on you guys recently." Lu Bo's tears flowed out. He took a deep breath and hugged Wang Miao. His voice was muffled as he said, "It's not hard, it's not hard. We didn't. You guys are the ones who suffered. We saw it all and remembered it in our hearts. If we didn't suffer this time, we wouldn't know how much Tang Dynasty cares for us. Thank you. Let's go. We'll check your body first. Especially you. You ate a lot of opium cream. We'll inject glucose into your vein first to clean it up. We'll observe you in the future to see how addicted you are." Wang Miao patted Lu Bo's back and smiled. Lu Bo also smiled. "I'm fine. I'm satisfied with eating some. I threw up the Last Supper yesterday. Otherwise, I would be like them, all tired and sleepy after being captured. Yes, we put in a large amount of sleeping pills yesterday. There were more than 50 people who were still sleeping. They didn't wake up even when they were dragged out. Lu Bo is really smart. He guessed our plan." Wang Miao put his hand on Lu Bo's shoulder and walked to the front. Immediately, the medical staff gave him an 4 drip. There was only glucose in it. The main thing was that Lu Bo had been tortured for the past 3 days and had to eat everything. There were also people who came to check his blood pressure and heartbeat. There were even people who came to disinfect his fingers and take blood for a simple blood sugar test. If there was a lack of glucose, they would need to replenish it. The first to be checked was naturally Lu Bo, and the others. The people living at the border had to wait. There were only 9 medical staff in total, and all of them had a red cross on them. It was the international medical symbol. Zhang Xiaobao and Wang Wan had given it according to their habits. Actually, it didn't have to be a cross. It could also be a symbol. What's a code name for Wui? It's not as good as Lei Ting. The person who wanted to run first asked curiously. He was still awake. Lu Bo replied, "Chiyue Wui? I share the same robes with you. Wang Yuxing, repair my spear. I share the same hatred. Chiyue Wui? I share the same lake. Wang Yuxing, repair my spear and halberd. I work with you. Chiyue Wui? I share the same robes with you. Wang Yuxing, repair my armor and soldiers. I walk with you." What does that mean? This person was even more confused. When you have time, you'll know when you read the book. It's a request for battle, and also a poem that expresses our unity. Lu Bo replied naturally. Lu Dongjia is indeed knowledgeable. Just by hearing a code name, you know what we mean. Alright, Lu Dongjia, rest first. Others come and check. After that, take a hot bath. Someone is boiling water for you. After that, eat some porridge and go to sleep. Wang Miao admired Lu Bo the most. He cooperated very well. He had clearly guessed that the food he ate would harm his body. But for the sake of the big picture, he still ate it without hesitation. "I'm not sleepy, I'm not sleeping. Look, I'm full of energy now. This young man shook his arms and twisted his waist as he spoke. You'll be sleepy in a while. We were afraid that there would be problems during the rescue, so we added stimulants to your food. This way, when the cannibals attack, you can run. Once the effects wear off, you'll be very sleepy. Go and check first. Wang Miao smiled as he spoke to the young man. He was also saying this for the others to hear. After he finished speaking, he turned around and planned to leave to arrange other things. At the same time, he was going to report the good news to the young master and young lady at home. Not a single person had been injured, let alone died during the rescue. Wait a moment. Lu Bo called out to Wang Miao and said embarrassedly, let me take a closer look at the rice sprout on your chest. This is the second time I've seen it. The first time was when you guys were clearing out the mountain bandits. I was far away. The legendary number 0 seedling protection team. It's fine if they don't appear, but if they do, they'll definitely win. Wang Miao chuckled and stood in front of Lu Bo to let him take a closer look. Actually, there wasn't much to see. It was already on the newspaper. Lu Bo wanted to get closer to the rice sprout, so he stretched out his hand and gently touched the embroidered pattern. The cartoon rice sprout was so cute that it made people want to laugh. Their flag was also very funny. Every family had a different rice sprout. However, this rustic name of the seedling protection team and this cute cartoon pattern represented the most elite existence of the Tang Empire. They were invincible and undefeatable. If someone were to ask which team had the strongest offensive power in the Tang Empire, it would definitely be the direct team of the Zhang family and Wang family. Of course, the Emperor's team didn't count. That team couldn't be used casually. Lu Bo stroked the rice sprout as he said, such a cute rice sprout. The people of the Tang Empire feel close and at ease when they see it, but the enemies feel fear and nightmares when they see it. Sign this for me. I'll go home and give it to my youngest son. He's always wanted to see Xiaobei and the others, but he couldn't find the opportunity. It's not good to disturb them when he's free. Who's Xiaobei? The young man was still curious. He had already checked his body and was fine. It was good to be young. He might have been a little weak in the past, but after eating military rations for 3 days straight, he recovered. She's the younger sister of Xiao Bao and Cuckoo. She's a very interesting girl. Xiao Yuan, Xiao Chong, Xiao Nan, and 8 other children of similar age are with her. All the children of the Tang Empire want to play with them, and all the adults like them. They're very sensible and smart. When Lu Bo mentioned Xiaobei, the 9 of them revealed a kind smile. Not only did they like them, but they also knew that they were their hope. Then aren't they still children? Are they very powerful? I can beat them, I can beat them. The young man was unconvinced. The older man next to him was frightened when he heard this. He quickly explained, don't be fooled by how big this child is. In fact, he's only 14 years old this year. Nonsense, it's all nonsense. Lu Bo shook his head. It's okay. Xiaobei and the others won't care. Little brother, don't be fooled by how tall and strong you are. You'll have to fight them somewhere. If you don't use weapons and fight on the ground, you'll only be tied with them. If you're not careful, you might be killed by them. If you're in the water, there will be dozens of people like you. Give them some time, and they will kill you one by one. You won't be able to fight back because there are no rivers or good lakes where you live. You usually live in the mountains. It's hard to say whether you can swim, let alone fight in the water. I don't believe it. How can they beat me? If I beat one, the others will run away in fear, the young man said angrily. Lu Bo didn't say anything. He just smiled. He couldn't really fight. No matter what he said, it was reasonable. However, he knew that if he really beat one, the other 8 would fight with their lives. They would hug your legs and beat you to death. Moreover, it was said that they started learning combat from the age of 4. Did they really think that they were easy to bully? Okay. Wang Miao didn't get angry with the young man. He said to him, if you have the strength, go help boil the water so that you can use it for bathing. New clothes will be sent here in the morning. Actually, Xiaobei and the others aren't like what you think. They're very strong, and they know a lot of knowledge. If you want to be better than them in the future, you have to study hard. They're only 14 years old. What if I have a knife? Can they beat me? The young man's willpower was still lacking. He still wanted to compete. The older man slapped the back of the young man's head. Go boil the water. You have a knife. They have guns. What are your identities? What are their identities? Why would they fight with you? If you say any more, be careful that the seedling protection team will teach you a lesson. When the young man heard this, he was scared. He knew that he would not be able to win against a group of people from the seedling protection team. He had not seen them use knives before. It seemed that they used their hands, arms, knees, and legs to knock them down. Were their fists made of iron? Especially when they attacked from behind. They held the other person's head and moved their arms. That person's head drooped down. How did they play? He's just a child. Don't mind him. Lu Bo was afraid that someone would attack that person, so he said to Wang Miao. Wang Miao shook his head. We won't hurt him, but we have to talk to him properly. He said it in front of us. We'll just treat it as a joke. If he says it again when he goes there in the future and others hear it, the consequences. Yes. We have to talk to him properly. If he said that in front of me, I would beat him up. If we go to a crowded place, he will be beaten to death. Brother Wang, sign it? Lu Bo suddenly thought of the many Tang people he had met. If that young man had said the same thing, he would definitely not have survived. Once the surrounding people came forward, they would not rest until they were beaten to death. Insulting and belittling the Zhang and Wang clans was a major crime. There was no law in the law. It was said that in Xuanyang, Xiao Bei and the others were almost bombed, but the locals dug 3 feet into the ground to find them. If you belittled them, wouldn't you be provoking the entire Great Tang? It would be useless even if you brought the case to Hanyuan Palace Hall. No one in the royal court would dare to speak up for you. Wang Miao refused. We can't sign anything for you. Let's go back and tell the little ancestors that there's a new camera. Take a picture of them and get them to sign on the back of the photo. Here, you can give it to your children. Camera? What's that? Lu Bo had never heard of it before. It's something that looks more like a real person than a painting. It's still very valuable now, Wang Miao replied. Lu Bo could tell that it was better than a painting and was very valuable now. Didn't that mean that it could be used in bulk in the future? The price wouldn't be low, but with his family's money, it shouldn't be a problem for him to use it a few times. Thus he happily said, You must remember that my children haven't had the chance to see Xiao Bei and the others. Moreover, they're in Idyll now. If I don't help them once when I go back, they'll throw a tantrum at me again. I can't bear to hit them when they throw a tantrum. If I hit them too hard, then you'll be arrested. Don't think that they're your children. Their lives aren't in your hands. I'll send a telegram now and tell the young master and young lady, who are waiting at home for news, that the rescue was successful. They've been paying attention to this operation, and even personally came up with a few plans. I'll also mention your request while I'm at it. Perhaps the little ancestors will be very happy to know that your children want to see them and take the initiative to look for you. This can be considered a form of consolation for your family before you return home. We won't have to send a message to your family alone. Wang Miao turned around again. Wait a moment. Lu Bo called out again and said with embarrassment. Then, you can send the message first. We'll talk later. I was afraid that you wouldn't come back. It wasn't easy to see you, and I have a lot to say. Team 0. I have something to boast about in the future. Someone go and send the message. Wang Miao instructed the person beside him. He could understand Lu Bo's current state of mind. He had just escaped from the jaws of death, and he needed some sort of spiritual comfort. After all, he was only a businessman, and not an elite member of the special forces. During the rescue process, one of the reasons was to give the other party psychological counseling. Otherwise, what was the point of rescuing someone who had gone insane after 2 days? Speak. We'll always be by your side, and there will be more people coming. Don't worry. Wang Miao smiled warmly. Lu Bo stared blankly for a moment before he suddenly understood why the other party was like this. He, who was usually indifferent to the loss of money, once again shed tears. He said, If I ever do anything wrong to the Tang Empire in the future, I will be struck by lightning. You are indeed the strongest from the depths of your soul. I will publicize this matter and let all the people of the Tang Empire know what is behind them. What I want to ask is, how much resources did you guys use to rescue us? My family has some money, and I want to compensate you guys. I can't let you guys spend too much. There's no need. You've already paid the taxes, so it's only right. Wang Miao didn't intend to ask for money. Could it be that he wouldn't rescue them if they didn't have money? That's not what I mean. I won't give you money. I just want to ask how much manpower and resources you guys used, so that I can have an idea. Lu Bo changed his way of asking. He knew that he had to do more, or his conscience wouldn't be at ease. We didn't use much. We just sent a message back. Then, we sent someone to ask the merchants who maintain the trade route, and roughly described what you looked like. Then they said who you were. After that, it was easy. We directly went to your house and asked about you. Then we looked for the people who were in contact with you. We got everything out of them. Wang Miao replied. So they'll tell you the moment you ask? What do you think? We'll prove that we're subordinates of Xiao Bao and Cuckoo. Oh, that's right. I'll tell you if you ask me. Everyone in Great Tang is your informant. Lu Bo understood. The news of the successful rescue was quickly sent back to Idyll. Zhang Xiaobao and Wang Wan didn't just receive news from this place. In the past few days, they had successfully rescued 2 other places, and the last place was already under operation. They believed that there would be news soon, because those people had already been drugged. Chapter 1281. When the duo eaters who were on a hostage mission were killed, the people living at the border of various places also began to migrate long distances. They had to give up their original places of residence and move to the east. At the same time, they had to join the Great Tang. Once the border was no longer dangerous, they could come back if they wanted to. If they didn't want to, they could go anywhere in the Great Tang. They could even settle down in Sanshui County, as long as they could find a suitable job and buy a house in Sanshui County. For a period of time, only the Great Tang soldiers would be left at the border. There would be no other people. This was a loss for the Great Tang, but it was also a gain. The loss was the local products, while the gain was a group of people who had no concept of country. The domestic construction required a large number of people. When the children were still young and their productivity was low, the handicraft industry was the best supplement and could be developed in a more labor-intensive way. Zhang Xiaobao didn't care about this. It seemed that the local products were missing, but that location could be left as a backup plan. For the time being, they had to solve the problem of population flow. The population of the cities with convenient water, land, road, and railway transportation is clearly increasing. This puts a certain amount of pressure on the lives of the locals. We have to find a way to adjust. Zhang Xiaobao looked at the report sent today and said to Wang Wan, who had just finished studying the military map. Wang Wan rubbed her temples. When she was looking at the map just now, she had to analyze it while looking at it. It was tiring. Not only did she have to formulate strategic goals that could change at any time according to the situation on the battlefield, she also had to summarize history and find suitable battle tactics. As the army on the 3 fronts slowly advanced, the problem of adapting to the environment was placed in front of them. There was also the various terrains, where in history, who won with a small number of people, how they fought, and what were the relevant factors. She had to put them into the current Great Tang army. Otherwise, it would be easy to be schemed against by the enemy. The death of a large number of soldiers would make their families very sad. The purpose of war was to gain benefits, not sacrifice. The more she thought about it, the more her head hurt. It looked like a small-scale battle tactic, but when countless tactical objectives were completed, the commander would discover that there were actually new strategic objectives that could be achieved. This was not something that could be changed by one's will. Even the most outstanding strategist would not be able to predict the final outcome from the beginning. Thus, Wang Wan had several marching routes in her mind. The more she thought about it, the more she felt that the path ahead was foggy. Zhang Xiaobao's voice pulled her out of the fog. Wang Wan sighed softly and asked, "Don't tell me you want to have different household registers in different places? When we arrive in other cities, we are not allowed to buy a house, and we are also deprived of benefits. At the same time, even the schools that our children attend are restricted. Zhang Xiaobao saw that Wang Wan was no longer worried about strategy and tactics. He smiled and said, "I'm not stupid. We can't lose the people's hearts that we worked so hard to gather so easily. What happened before was the result of internal strife between factions." At the same time, there was also the problem of the population demand for the overall economic development plan of the country. In fact, there were many cases in history where a large number of people migrated, especially when there was a disaster. The people who fled to other places caused a lot of trouble for the local people. I've thought about it carefully, and I don't think we can solve this problem by force. As for houses, as long as the outsiders have the money and are willing to buy them, they can buy them. There is no need to stop them, because we don't have any internal conflicts, and the imperial power is supreme. So, Wang Wan cooperated and led the way. So what we need to do the most now is to increase the research and production of luxury goods sold at home, and to convert the machinery of Tang heavy industry to civilian use, Zhang Xiaobao said very straightforwardly. Tang heavy industry, can you stop criticizing the term heavy industry? Steel production uses indigenous methods, at most with some advanced technological thinking. Oil refining uses indigenous methods. Of course, for the current Tang people it is very advanced. Look at our collection of liquefied petroleum gas. They collect thousands of tons at one time, and we can't even reach 1/10,000th of their collection. When Wang Wan thought of the term heavy industry, she found it funny. After laughing, a hopeful look appeared on her face. She was arguing with Zhang Xiaobao not because she felt that the current Tang industry should not continue to research. One day, it would achieve its goal. At least for now, it was at the forefront of the world. After arguing, Wang Wan realized that to solve the problem of population flow and concentration, why did he mention luxury goods and the machinery of the Ministry of Works? She then asked, "Hubby, do you think that with luxury goods and machinery, the pressure on the populated areas will be reduced?" Zhang Xiaobao pretended to be scared and then said with certainty, "Of course, if this is done well, the problem of population flow and concentration will also be solved. I am willing to listen to your opinion." Wang Wan stood up from her seat and sat beside Zhang Xiaobao, gently leaning her head on Zhang Xiaobao's shoulder. She had already realized that Xiao Bao suddenly mentioned this information, not because there was no way to solve the problem, but because he deliberately said it to her, so that she would be able to escape from the troubles of the previous strategic arrangements. With a man like this accompanying her, she would be happy for the rest of her life. Zhang Xiaobao adjusted his sitting position to make Wang Wan more comfortable and said, "Actually, the main reason for a large number of people to gather in places with convenient transportation is that there can be more profits from the circulation of goods and port processing. With more profits, the wages will also be higher. So what should we do to make the wages in other places higher? The simplest way is to use policies to reduce taxes and other expenses in other places, and at the same time, to build infrastructure. It involves the word money. Right now, we have free medical care, free education, infant support benefits, employment training benefits, elderly protection benefits, and direct state compensation benefits in disaster areas. In addition to the previous large number of low-interest and interest-free loan benefits, we don't have much money to do other things." "You mean to rely on luxury goods to make money, and then use it to implement policies and infrastructure in other places?" Wang Wan asked cooperatively. "Yes, head. There is a very important problem in the process of the floating population gathering in key cities, and that is the concentration of capital. The concentration of capital in one area is an empty statement, but the real concentration is in the hands of businessmen. Businessmen who make a lot of money will have a high tax rate, but they still have too much money that they can't use. Money is just a number, and behind it represents the support of money. Unless I cause a large amount of inflation, they won't be able to use the corresponding resources if they don't spend money. When they have money, I give them 3 choices. One is to deposit it in a bank, and they will earn interest. Then, I will use the bank to lend money, and at the same time, maintain the growth rate of inflation at the deposit interest rate. Right? Zhang Xiaobao asked Wang Wan. Wang Wan had a smile on her face. Yes, the deposit in the bank is actually not the appreciation of money, but the preservation of value. Many people don't understand, and they always feel that they have too much money in their hands. In the end, when they buy things, the price of things will also increase. If the bank is really used to increase the value of depositors, then when the bank lends out, it will require more interest. In the end, the original interest of the deposit currency will actually depreciate. Money doesn't appear out of thin air, and the amount of money that appears is related to productivity. The only advantage is that this part of the money from the bank can be used to support production technology, and it can increase the basic raw materials of goods. The people who deposit their money in the bank get a higher level of enjoyment, and not an absolute increase in money. The higher level of enjoyment includes the lowering of the price of new products and certain low-end goods in certain aspects. For example, there will be a radio in the future. Another example is that the yield of cabbage per mu will increase, and the price will be lower. But when the people measure the money in their hands, they don't think about it like that. They think about whether the goods that are in the middle of society are cheaper. Is it cheaper? No. If it is really cheaper, it means that this kind of goods is no longer in the middle of society. It has been reduced to the status of cabbage. Unfortunately, there are too few people who can understand this. What are the remaining two paths you arranged for them? Wang Wan temporarily stopped thinking about the war and helped Zhang Xiaobao think about the rich people. Zhang Xiaobao stretched out his arm and hugged Wang Wan's waist. He didn't say anything immediately. Instead, he sighed about what Wang Wan said just now. Just as Wang Wan said, the country's protection of capital is not the protection of the currency itself, but the protection of the quality of life of the people in the process of national strength. Luxury goods are still luxury goods, and what can't be bought is still not affordable. But in the process of currency flow and depreciation, the investment in production technology is the most important part. Many people say that things are expensive. In the past, a piece of fermented bean curd was 2 cents, but now it was 3 cents. In fact, in the past, he earned 50 yuan a month, but now he earned 2,500 yuan a month. Then the price ratio of the fermented bean curd back then to the current one was 115, and the income ratio was 150. Moreover, the fermented bean curd now is more delicious. But why does it feel expensive? Because with the development of technology, people's needs are also increasing. They spend too much on other aspects, and it doesn't feel like the price has dropped. Overall, it means that things are expensive. In the past, they don't need too many goods. Having a bungalow to live in and a radio is a good pursuit, and they can save a lot of money to buy fermented bean curd. After that, there are cars, televisions and phones, more gold and diamond jewelry, and there are electricity and gas in the house. Unknowingly, there are more ways to spend money in life, and it feels expensive to buy a triangle of fermented bean curd. What is the root of this problem? It's not the depreciation of the currency, nor is it how much the price has dropped. It's because the proportion of people who own the currency is in the minority in society, which is also called polarization. The better a country could control polarization, the more stable the political and economic system of that country would be. Zhang Xiaobao feels that there is still a long way to go. Because of polarization, in addition to the corruption of officials and economic loopholes, there is also the existence of individuals in society. People are smart. If they can make money, they will naturally have money. If they make more money, it is unreasonable to collect more taxes from others. Why? But there is no other way. After all, you live in a group. Your income comes from the group, and your safety comes from the group. Therefore, Zhang Xiaobao can only control polarization through other means, and not eliminate it. If polarization is really eliminated, then the whole society will lose the motivation to move forward. Everyone will not work hard. No matter how hard they work, in the end, they will get the same result as others. Who is stupid? Zhang Xiaobao now wants to discuss this problem with Wang Wan. There are two other ways. One way is to enjoy. We can make more luxury goods and sell them. The profit of luxury goods has always been much higher than the proportion of goods that people enjoy. It is almost hundreds or thousands of times higher. Among 100 people, if you enjoy a radio and others don't, then you will definitely pay more than 100 times the cost of the radio. You may have to pay 1,000 times or 10,000 times the cost. If they enjoy it, we will have money. We will use this money to do what we said before. The third way is to guide the rich to underdeveloped areas, which are inconvenient and have low production capacity. We will provide them with preferential policies. They can build their own roads, or we can build the roads. It is the same. If we build the roads, they will have to pay in other aspects. If they build the roads, they will get more policies. I hope that they will choose to build their own infrastructure. We will turn the money used to build the roads into loans to them. At the same time, we will increase their policy benefits. The gains and losses are the same. There is not much difference. The difference is that this kind of company has a social responsibility and confidence in self-development. I will pay attention to it and look for them if there is something good in the future. Of course, there are policy benefits and policy requirements. That is, when their investment and output ratio is the same as the ratio of the same industry and the same strength of businessmen in prosperous cities, they must pay the same wages as the prosperous cities. In this way, everyone will not have to go to the key cities to carry out a one-way labor flow. I should have killed all the people in your city's civil affairs department back then. They lost a talent. Wang Wan said with a smile. I have never regretted the path I have taken. If I had to choose again, I would still want to do that. Because that way, I will still meet you. Disgusting. You have a clever mouth. Wang Wan lightly punched Zhang Xiaobao. What if they don't follow your train of thought and deliberately oppose you? I am saying what if. The truth is that they will listen to you. Especially after the news of you traveling thousands of miles to rescue them is exposed in the newspapers. Everyone will be more patriotic. If I have to say what if, it is that if they don't agree, I will use my own money to build non-key cities. In the end, I will use cheap products to attack their profits. Our business is expanding very slowly now, because we want to give them more space to develop. It is not because I don't have the ability to expand. I have not made any plans to attack the domestic economy, because I promised you. At the same time, it is because I love this nation. It does not mean that I am afraid of them. If they force me into a corner, I will teach them a lesson. You must know that the technology and the banking system are in my hands. Why did we withdraw from the shares of Great Tang Bank? We held the shares, and Li Longji did not dare to trust us. There would be other shareholders who would come in and criticize us. I withdrew, but I am in control. Whoever controls the banking system controls the entire society. Zhang Xiaobao's tone was very calm when he said this, but Wang Wan could hear a sense of absolute arrogance. She admitted that Zhang Xiaobao had this ability. Otherwise, the order back then would not have been just to capture and not kill. Wang Wan was very happy when she thought about how she had captured such a person. She said to Zhang Xiaobao, "Don't be anxious. When you invade, let them take over the domestic economy. They are very obedient. If someone really dares to disobey, I will directly publish an article in the newspaper, saying that a certain corporation has hurt me and Xiaobao too much. In the future, when they are in danger outside, I will no longer help them, and let the imperial court send troops. That way, their corporation will not need to face any danger outside. The other businessmen in the country will kill them. When the meteor battle squad returns successfully, our prestige will be even higher. Rescue revenge regardless of the distance, regardless of the cost. I believe that this is what every citizen in every country wants to see the most." That's right. If the country could treat me like this back then, let's not talk about it anymore. Let's go meet Huang Yaoben. Previously, I gave him some ideas as a deity. Why did he not look for a deity and insist on looking for us? Would a deity lie to him? Seeing that Wang Wan was happy, Zhang Xiaobao remembered that Huang Yaoben had come to meet him and Wang Wan today. Previously, when they were eating the barbecue, he gave Huang Yaoben an idea at the last moment. He told them how to earn money and also help the country develop. However, after Huang Yaobin returned, he first looked for someone to discuss and formulate a plan. When the preliminary plan was out, he came to the Blue Sea Silver Sands to look for him and Wang Wan. Seriously, why did he have to come looking for us? I still wanted to have some tenderness with my husband. Wang Wan retracted her head and stood up. Then, why don't we ignore him first and have some tenderness in bed? Zhang Xiaobao stood up as well. Hooligan. Wang Wan led the way and walked out. Zhang Xiaobao scratched his head and walked behind Wang Wan. He muttered to himself, "The most difficult thing to deal with in this world is the woman you love deeply. If you don't think of a way to coax her, you won't be able to live with your conscience. Why don't you coax such a good woman? If you use a strategy to coax her, you won't be able to live with your conscience. Why do you want to scheme against such a good woman? If you don't use any tricks and just coax her from the bottom of your heart, you won't be able to live with your conscience. Why do you have to be so straightforward with such a good woman? Can't you know how to be romantic? You are using schemes to coax me now. If you want to mutter, stay away from me. Don't let me hear you." Wang Wan rolled her eyes at Zhang Xiaobao and pursed her lips into a smile. When the two arrived at the meeting place, Huang Yaobin had already drunk 2 cups of tea and eaten half a kilogram of snacks. He was holding a ripe watermelon and gnawing on it. When he saw Zhang Xiaobao and Wang Wan, Huang Yaobin hurriedly stood up and took out a stack of papers. He said to the two of them, "You are finally here. I'm mainly looking for Xiaobao. A deity gave me an idea. I think it's pretty good, but I'm worried about him. Xiaobao, help me take a look and see if he's lying to me. I nearly got someone to follow the plan, but I thought it wasn't right. I need to discuss it with you. Who said that deities can't lie? I'll only be at ease if you take a look." Chapter 1282. Huang Yaobin looked at Zhang Xiaobao expectantly. As for Wang Wan, he selectively ignored her. He felt that it was better to talk to Xiaobao about economic matters. Cuckoo should be used for war. Huang Yaobin was very excited. He had just applied to meet Xiaobao yesterday, and it was approved yesterday. They arranged to meet today, just as he had expected. Xiaobao and Cuckoo seemed to have high status, but they were so close to the people of Tang. As long as there was something important, as long as they had time, they would meet with you. Of course, if you were bored and came to chat with them, it would probably not work. Zhang Xiaobao did not take the proposal. Instead, he looked up at the sky. After a while, he said, "They are just small gods. Killing them is as easy as killing an ant." Huang Yaobin also looked up at the sky. He did not see anything, but he was very excited. It seems that Xiaobao and Cuckoo are also gods. They are not afraid of these two. Xiaobao, since they have no influence on Tang, what they said. Huang Yaobin still wanted to do something that would benefit Tang. Now that he had recovered, he felt that everything he ate tasted good, and did not have diarrhea. He thought that the gods had some tricks up their sleeves. The problem now was whether the gods' tricks would work. As he spoke, he handed the proposal over. Zhang Xiaobao still did not take it. He showed a gentle smile and said to Huang Yaobin, "Okay, we will do as we have discussed. Pay attention to hygiene and safety. Tell the people who come later to not urinate and defecate everywhere. Also, if anyone comes later, they should first cut their hair, bathe and change their clothes. There will be some investment in the beginning. Don't worry, we will give you some money first for you to use. Don't spend your family's money. Your status in your family is not high now. If you don't have more money, you will be easily bullied by your family." Huang Yaobin listened to Zhang Xiaobao's words. He looked down at the proposal in his hand, looked up at Zhang Xiaobao, and then looked up at the sky. He could not help but gulp and said nervously, "Xiaobao, you can also count? I don't even have to ask, but I already know what the deities are telling me. We can only calculate the matters of immortals. When immortals descend to the mortal world, they will definitely disturb the stars. Even if it's a small god, their every move is within our calculations. It's not easy to calculate the actions of ordinary people. It goes against the harmony of the heavens." As Zhang Xiaobao spoke, he felt very embarrassed. He had already lied to her once, and he had to continue lying. If someone else had used the same method to lie to him, he would have fought them to the death. Huang Yao did not feel that he had been cheated. In fact, he was very happy. With 2 immortals in charge, he did not have to worry about other immortals causing trouble in the future. After some consideration, he asked, "Then, what about the other matter? Let's do it together. Since you can't handle the logistics, you can first make empty trucks to distribute goods. Open up the shop first, then cooperate with the local government's transport team and postal team. You can take on private jobs in the future. In this way, you don't have to worry about problems or being cheated." Zhang Xiaobao immediately explained another plan of the immortals. In fact, the latter was not as important as the first. The first was that Zhang Xiaobao thought that the people at the border would come over. Before the war was settled, they could not let them go back. They probably would not be willing to go back. If they were to come over, they would definitely think of the nearest bustling city, Idyll, once they entered the Tang Empire's territory. Tens of thousands of people squeezing in, as well as the short-term cyclical manpower during the transportation process, would put a lot of pressure on the local government. If it had been the previous provincial governor, the one who built the park, he would have been able to arrange it properly. However, the current government would definitely not be able to do so. It would be chaotic. His younger brothers and sisters would arrange for some of the transportation workers to do the work. It would not be good to leave the outsiders to his younger brothers and sisters. They would also be too busy. Furthermore, there was another problem. If there were only a few outsiders, the locals would not think much of it and would accept them easily. It was a kind of sympathy and pity. When there were more people, it would affect the local industries, especially the low-skilled industries. The most direct would be the pure manual labor group. There would be conflicts. If they were not resolved early, when the conflicts erupted, they would have to pay a higher price to appease them. It just so happened that they met Huang Yaoben, a person who had a bit of a mental illness. When they were treating him, they used him once. In the process of chatting, they found that this fellow was a talent. Thus, they decided to leave this matter to him. They would have Huang Yaoben mark out a piece of land where the new city was being built. It would be used to settle the people who came from the border and form a settlement. They would be given low wages, but they would be given full benefits. The low wages could be explained to them as rescuing them and settling them down. They would have to repay the initial investment. However, if they were not given full benefits, they would think that they were inferior. Such a situation wasn't a good thing. If they felt that they were inferior, others would unconsciously look down on them. They had no knowledge, no culture, and no skills. Why would they come to live with the Tang people? Even if there are floating clouds, one's heart will not move. Then should it move or not? Huang Yaoben was very depressed. After looking at the sky, Xiaobao actually said that there was no place to spend his time on this kind of thing. Relative silence, absolute movement. Whether it moves or not, it depends on the heart. Zhang Xiaobao replied. Huang Yaoben nodded helplessly. If that's the case, then what should I do? Move, dance with the white clouds, and accompany the blue sky. Xiaobao, you're talking about your family's big eagle, water cloud, right? I can't fly up there. I can't fly up there either. Let's get down to business. Wang Wan was not willing. Why were they talking in riddles? She still had to cook for Xiaobei and the others. Zhang Xiaobao smiled and said, "You're too engrossed. Actually, the sky is really blue. Okay, I'll tell you. Southwest of Yi Province's main river, there's a swamp. Further west, there's a wasteland." Is there? There's a swamp. But I've never seen a wasteland. Huang Yaoben thought about the terrain, but it seemed that he had never seen one before. Could it be that he did not know enough about his hometown? That's possible. You haven't seen a wasteland, but have you seen a barren mountain? Zhang Xiaobao asked. Huang Yaoben nodded. I know. What do you want to do? Flatten the mountain and fill in the swamp, Zhang Xiaobao said. What's the use? We'll need a lot of manpower. Huang Yaoben was not stupid. He immediately thought of the amount of work. A few small hills did not look high, but if he really dug them up, there would be a lot of soil. Listen to me. When the time comes, you do it first. Remember to clean up. Collect all the feces. I'll have someone build a methane tank for you. Zhang Xiaobao did not explain too much to Huang Yaoben. He hoped that Huang Yaoben would be able to figure it out himself. Huang Yaoben was very obedient. He turned around and left with doubts in his heart. When the time comes, there will be no distinction between the old and the new. The two will be merged into one, making the city bigger and easier to manage. Also, the outside can be used as a garden. Xiaobei nodded and continued eating. The little boy who was being educated had also been eating with them for the past few days. He only went home after eating at night. When he came back early in the morning and heard others talking, he could not help but ask, "Brother Xiaobao, are we going to sell the flowers that we planted?" "I'm not selling, and you're not allowed to give me a discount either. When the city gets bigger, it'll take a long time to walk from one end to the other. It'll be good to see a bunch of flowers." Zhang Xiaobao treated them equally. "I am in a good mood when I come back from outside. I can see the flowers before I get home, right?" The little boy asked. "You are so smart. Don't eat the food on the table. Put it there." Zhang Xiaobao praised and stopped the little boy from dropping the food on the table because he was distracted and wanted to eat it. The little boy obediently did not touch it. He picked up another portion and put it in his bowl. He ate it together with the rice. At first glance, it was obvious that he used to eat like this. It was very likely that he did not have a separate plate for the food. He just put the food in his bowl and found a place to squat down and eat. Zhang Xiaobao did not care about this kind of habit. As long as he was comfortable eating, it was fine. As for hygiene and digestion problems, those situations would not occur, because this was already a habit. It was easy to cause problems if it could be changed. If he really wanted to be hygienic, then he would separate the meals. Everyone would eat one portion and use the public utensils to eat. After eating for a while, Xiaozhu put down her chopsticks and asked her brother, "Brother, I have seen the plan of the new city. In addition to the school, the yamen, the medical center, and the remaining restaurants, there is only a small area left for large houses. In the future, when the economic development is better and there are more rich people, what should we do if there are not enough large houses?" "This is a good question. Let your sister answer it." Zhang Xiaobao threw down this sentence and buried his head in eating. Wang Wan was stunned. She met her sister's gaze and suddenly thought of something. She glared at Zhang Xiaobao and replied, "There is a swamp area outside the city. There are also a few barren hills. When the time comes, we will flatten the hills and fill the swamp with soil. Then we will build villas there. There are small rivers on both sides. The scenery is beautiful, the sky is blue, and there are even floating clouds." At this time, she finally understood why Xiaobao had asked Huang Yao to do what he did. The scenery was beautiful, the environment was beautiful, and building villas was perfect for people who had money but did not know how to spend it. It was a luxury type of existence. Xiaozhu did not know that this arrangement was made not long ago. She tilted her head and thought for a while before asking, "What about manpower? Moving the mountains requires a lot of manpower. Just the wages spent are not small. Is it worth it?" Yes. Is it worth it? For short-term laborers like us, we need to pay a lot of wages every day." Xiaobei followed up with a question. He even stretched out his hand and moved his fingers. It was as if he was calculating how much money was spent. Wang Wan smiled and said to Xiaobei, "Little money grubber, the more you spend, the more you earn. However, the cost of manpower doesn't need to be too high. It's the people who came from the western border. If we suddenly give them the same wage, they will become confused and won't know how to spend it. First, give them some time and let them gradually adapt. Treat it as compensation for the cost of rescuing and migrating them." Yes. We need to compensate them. I heard that they did not have much of a sense of belonging in the past. If they are like our original patriots, then won't the patriots feel sad in their hearts?" Xiaobei supported. "Brother, I still have something to say." After Xiaobei supported not giving more money to the newcomers, he said, "We plan to build a leather processing factory. A large-scale one. Where do you think it should be?" "You are not allowed to build it." Zhang Xiaobao rejected directly. Chapter 1283. In the afternoon, the little guys asked to go to the swamp to play. They said that they wanted to check the terrain in advance and teach the little boy, who liked to play games and not go to school, how to catch river snails. They brought a lot of people, and specially prepared long bamboo poles with hooks. After the 9 little guys experienced the dangers of the swamp, they had always been afraid of the swamp. As for Zhang Xiaobao not allowing them to build a large fur processing plant, they were not unhappy. After all, they were used to it. They could always find opportunities to make a fortune, but every time this business was done, it would cause conflicts in the local industries, and their brother would stop it. Only those that could make a little money and could make up for the shortcomings of other industries were allowed. So they did not care. At most, they would think about it later. There were plenty of opportunities to make money. They could think about it while learning about the relationships between various industries and the knowledge taught by their brother. For example, this fur processing plant. Idyll was very important. The daily throughput of goods was very large. In addition, there would be a steady stream of small caravans coming and going from the occupied areas by land. Then, whoever monopolized the trade of fur would be able to influence at least 50 provinces through this trade. How could such a big influence be monopolized casually? If Zhang Xiaobao and Wang family built a fur processing plant here, how could other businessmen in the same industry survive? Who would sell the fur to others in the future? Therefore, Xiao Bei and the other 8 understood that in an important area of material circulation, there could not be a monopoly in any industry. Otherwise, it would cause artificial price disruption to the whole area and the products in the surrounding radiation area. In turn, this showed that monopolies were very profitable. At the same time, they could gain other benefits beyond the value of the goods, such as local political connections and cross-industry connections. Xiao Bei and the others could understand, but the little boy who was being educated by them was confused. He couldn't understand how building a factory had anything to do with all this nonsense. For a moment, the little boy began to have a new yearning for school. He felt that he did not understand, but Xiao Bei and the others could. When he played with them, he could not lift his head. After sending his brothers and sisters to the door and watching them leave, Zhang Xiaobao said to Wang Wan, "The local scenery is really good. When we build villas in the future, let's buy 2. We can live here when we are free." Wang Wan did not pay attention to what Zhang Xiaobao said. What villa? Could he come here once a year in the future? Even if they really needed to come over, it was impossible for them to live in the villa. No matter how big the villa was, how could it compare to the restaurant at home? You should learn from the real estate developers in the future and get some money first. Seeing that Wang Wan didn't answer, Zhang Xiaobao said something else. Should we advertise first and ask them to take out a portion of the money as a deposit before the house is built? The agreement is 20 strings of coins per square meter. After the house is built, it will become 50 strings of coins per square meter. If they don't take out the money, we can return the deposit to them for free? Wang Wan asked with a smile. That's right. It's a commonly used method. It's not new anymore. But every time it's used, there will always be people who fall for it. Real estate developers will buy in advance to drive up the sales figures and encourage more people to buy. Then, they will refund the money without paying any interest. At this time, administrative orders should be used to regulate and not a simple market economy. Because guiding the public is one of the functions of the government. Zhang Xiaobao was just saying. He didn't want to use such methods to cheat people to make money. Wang Wan knew that Zhang Xiaobao wasn't saying that he wanted to do this. But with the development of the social economy, other businessmen would think of such a good method, especially when ordinary people were buying houses. When the truly rich people bought expensive houses, no one would dare to cheat them. When the time came, people would be cheated by real estate developers one after another. Other than scolding the real estate developers, they would also complain to the country about why the imperial court didn't do anything. After a long time, the imperial court would lose its credibility. In the future, when there was something that required the help of the people would dawdle in the beginning. Later on, when there was danger, not only would the people not be anxious, but they would also gloat. Then the country would be finished. Unlike now, when the people were very obedient and did whatever they were told to do. It was said that the people could be ordered, but they couldn't be made to know. But with the current credibility of the imperial court, there was no need to explain. Just tell the people directly that if you dug a ditch in front of their house, even if the people understood, they would work hard to dig a ditch because they believed that the imperial court wouldn't do anything to harm them. Such people's trust was easy to lose, but difficult to gain. It was important to protect them as much as possible. The trust of the people in you wasn't something that you could rely on to harm the people, so you had to cherish it. So, you want the imperial court to strengthen the legislation and enforcement in this area? Wang Wan directly brought up Zhang Xiaobao's plan for this boring matter. Zhang Xiaobao nodded. That's right. We have to do it in advance, so that those businessmen who think that they are smart enough to have such thoughts will give up on it. We have to prepare for a rainy day. The only thing that worries me is whether the officials in the imperial court will stop us for their own interests. It's not good for us to always interfere, as it will affect the imperial power. Even if Li Longji doesn't say anything, others will still find fault with us. So, Wang Wan asked. So, let them suffer a little first. When the time comes, we'll use this opportunity to resolve the matter. Communicate with Li Longji first and set a trap for the other officials in the imperial court, Zhang Xiaobao said with a sinister smile. All right, let's report it. Wang Wan agreed. 5 days later, when Zhang Xiaobao and Wang Wan estimated that the team that went to Jinla should have news back, Li Longji had finished discussing with the officials in the morning court in the capital. When they returned to their posts, he began to call them. Li Longji's behavior was purely because he had nothing better to do. He didn't say it when the morning court ended, and insisted on waiting for them to return before using the phone. It was obvious that he hadn't lost interest in this new communication tool. Connect to the Ministry of Works. Look for Zhang Zhong in the Shang study room of the Ministry of Works. Zhang Qing, come to Xingqing Palace. There's something important to discuss. Li Longji made the call. It was still manually connected. Zhang Zhong didn't know what was going on, but he agreed. Li Longji put down the phone and picked it up again. Connect to the Ministry of Revenue. Look for the Minister of Revenue. Wang Qing, go to Xingqing Palace. He called them one by one like this tirelessly. However, the officials were already used to it. Ever since the phones were installed, Her Majesty would call them for no reason, and then talk about things that didn't concern the overall situation. When she really couldn't find a topic to talk about, she would even ask what they wanted to eat for lunch. No one knew when these days would end. Not long after, the officials who had just entered office mode were summoned by Li Longji to Xingqing Palace. Xingqing Palace had been renovated and was 50% larger than before. Moreover, a lot of good wood and stones were used. The officials stood in the small square in front of Xingqing Palace and waited for Her Majesty to speak. At the same time, they looked at the current building and the newly planted flowers and plants that had been brought in from elsewhere. They were all calculating how much money had been used to build Xingqing Palace, which had already looked very beautiful before, and was now even more beautiful than before. Everyone, look at the big fish tank that I had people bring in yesterday. Don't you think it looks more comfortable than the previous one? It's a pity that there are no fish in it. I have to buy 2 first. Let me introduce it to you. This fish tank is not only bigger, but the glass is also stronger than before. Look, look, look. In addition to the bigger fish tank, there is also an automatic water circulation system, supported by electricity, a lamp in the water, and a heating and oxygenation system. The Ministry of Works specially made them and set up a separate manufacturing and sales department. When you go back today, if you want to buy them, you can look for Minister Zhang. He will give you a 20% discount. Li Longji introduced happily, like a child showing off his new clothes to others. When the officials heard Her Majesty's words, they all gritted their teeth. She called them over just to see the fish tank. It was beautiful, but Her Majesty really had nothing to do. Now she was advertising for the Ministry of Works? Among the crowd, Jiang Xin of the Agriculture Temple didn't think much of it. The design of the fish tank was indeed very good. However, before Her Majesty used it, the agriculture temple had already used it, and it was more practical than this one. At the same time, the number of fish tanks in front of them was far more than the fish tank in front of them. Jiang Xin knew that he had applied for 12 fish tanks from the Ministry of Works alone to be used to observe the situation of the crops in the water, so that better cultivation and pest control could be carried out. Jiang Xin felt very happy. Xiao Bao and Cuckoo spared no effort in supporting the agriculture temple. But at the same time, he also knew that he couldn't show this happiness. Otherwise, Her Majesty would be very angry if she heard about it. Who asked him to use it so late? Jiang Xin was very cooperative and asked, Your Majesty, how much is a 20% discount for a fish tank like this? It's not expensive. The total is 120 strings of coins. The entire set of equipment will be guaranteed for 3 years after you buy it. As long as it's not broken by people with stones, you can replace it if it's too damaged. If it's not damaged, you can repair it. I guarantee that it will be comfortable and convenient to use. Li Longji was very suitable to be a promoter and patiently introduced the fish tank. Jiang Xin frowned and asked again, Your Majesty, 120 strings of coins is expensive, right? It's still a 20% discount. We are not outsiders and know that this glass tank is not very valuable. It's made with stones. The auxiliary equipment is also produced by the Ministry of Works, and is very simple. Can it be cheaper? What's not valuable? Minister Jiang, accounts are not calculated like this. Did the cost calculation only consider the price of the raw materials? Your knowledge of political economy isn't good enough, Li Longji said with a straight face. Jiang Xin quickly replied, Yes, I will continue to learn when I go back. It's not expensive, only 120 strings of coins. It won't be enough to buy many meters. It won't even be enough to fit a house. Then Your Majesty, can we buy it now? Li Longji smiled and waved his hand. Not now. You can only pay a part of the deposit. Those who want to buy it should hurry up. 50 strings of coins for each fish tank, and then the Ministry of Works will produce it. You can pick it up in 2 days. Yes, we can sign a contract first. If there are any accidents, the deposit you paid will be refunded to you. However, each person has to order at least 3 of them. At the same time, there will be an additional bonus event. When the time comes, we will give it to you along with the fish tank. That will be a big surprise. Zhang Zhong also echoed, but he couldn't bear it. Someone was fooled again. I saw that some people have been waiting for the next chapter, so I will more or less say hello after the next chapter. Thank you for your support. Chapter 1284. The officials that were called over by Li Longji did not know that this was a scam specifically targeted at them. The purpose was to make them take the initiative to formulate more perfect laws. Of course, in the end, it was even more impossible to cheat them of their money. Li Longji was originally on the list of scammers, but in the end, Zhang Zhong felt that it was not good to always bully the emperor, so he leaked the news. Thus the leader of the scam changed. The officials signed a normal contract with the Independent Production and Sales Department under the Ministry of Works. There were only a few conditions. First, if there was a quality problem with the products, they would replace and repair them for free. Second, if they could not provide the products, they would directly return the deposit. Third, once the products were delivered, they would have to pay in full. Fourth, they would write that they had paid a deposit of 150 strings of coins. The content of the contract was very simple, and there were a few key points missing. However, the officials did not think too much about it. They did not even read the contents of the contract before they agreed. 2 days passed by quickly. As the leader, Li Longji once again gathered the officials in his free time and formed a team to go to the place where the fish tanks were sold. When they arrived, they found that there were many people waiting in the reception room. The walls of the reception room were filled with large paintings. When the officials saw the paintings, they were all confused. The people in the paintings were exactly them. There were sales staff explaining who the officials were, what kind of fish tank they liked, and why they liked it. The Minister of Revenue, Wang Bei, had an ugly expression. He felt that the matter of him being pointed at on the wall was a kind of use to him. He went to Zhang Zhong and asked, "Why is my painting on the wall?" "My painting is also on the wall," Zhang Zhong replied. Obviously, Zhang Zhong's answer did not satisfy Wang Bei. That was not what he was asking. Seeing that Zhang Zhong did not have the intention to continue speaking, he went to find Li Longji. Li Longji was greeting the people in the reception room. The people who could come to buy fish tanks were all quite wealthy. When they saw the emperor and the officials, they were very excited. However, they tried hard to restrain themselves and spoke to the emperor cautiously. They did not dare to show too much enthusiasm, for fear of being misunderstood. Therefore, it was very difficult for Li Longji to shake hands with him, so he could only nod his head repeatedly. "Your Majesty," Zhang Zhong hung this official's portrait on the wall, and even used this official to promote his products. This official thinks that this shouldn't be the case. Wang Bei waited for Li Longji to finish speaking with the merchant before whispering into his ear. Li Longji seemed to have just realized that there was a portrait on the wall. He looked around and nodded at Wang Bei. "I saw that Yuan Qing's portrait is also here. It's not bad. If you want to keep a real picture, you can take a picture. I reckon I can give you a discount." Wang Bei was very distressed. "Your Majesty, I'm saying that they should take down my portrait and stop mentioning what kind of fish tank I bought. I'm not their salesperson. Whose family is it? The Bureau of Works belongs to the Bureau of Works, and the Bureau of Works belongs to our great Tang. Don't speak nonsense." Li Longji was only targeting the latter part of Wang Bei's words. Yes, it belongs to our great Tang. Then, this official earnestly requests for your Majesty to step in and ask Zhang Zhong to take down the portrait. Is that possible? Wang Bei stopped complaining and directly made his request. "I'll ask for you. Don't be anxious." Li Longji smiled at the few people who bought the fish tanks and waved at Zhang Zhong. The other officials who didn't like to be surrounded by others also gathered around and waited for Zhang Zhong to give an explanation. Zhang Zhong jogged over to Li Longji and asked, "Your Majesty, does this official have any instructions?" Li Longji pointed at the portrait on the wall. "What's the matter?" "Oh, your Majesty is asking about this? As for sales, with the fact that all the officials have bought them, the fish tanks can be sold for a high price, and the sales will increase at the same time. Your Majesty, I just went to ask. Yesterday and today, there were 425 people who directly paid for the portrait that was hung up the night before. Moreover, the same item is not sold at the previous price of 150 strings of coins, but the actual selling price is 200 strings of coins." Zhang Zhong excitedly reported to Li Longji. Not bad. The performance is gratifying. We need to increase the publicity and sell more good items to satisfy the daily needs of our great Tang citizens. Of course, don't forget to pay taxes. Fish tanks are considered luxury goods, and the tax rate is very high. You must not evade taxes. Li Longji praised while at the same time emphasizing the issue of taxes. He turned his head and said to Wang Bei, "Wang Qing, I want to congratulate you. The revenue has increased again." Wang Bei had the urge to bang his head against the wall. He pointed at the wall and said to Li Longji, "Your Majesty, they're using this official to earn money for the portrait." "I know, but the Ministry of Works earned money and paid taxes. Didn't they put you in the Ministry of Revenue? The money is in your hands, so what are you unhappy about?" Li Longji said to Wang Bei, "That money belongs to the Ministry of Revenue, not this official. They're using this official's identity to earn their money. Your Majesty, this official is a person, a living person, not the Ministry of Revenue." Wang Bei began to explain this matter. He felt that something was wrong. Logically speaking, it was impossible for His Majesty to not know what he was trying to say. "You want to resign? Resign." Li Longji asked with widened eyes. Wang Bei hurriedly shook his head. He couldn't resign. The Minister of Revenue was a very high position, and he hadn't had enough of it yet. Gritting his teeth, he admitted, "This official won't say that I'll take it. This official wishes to receive some additional compensation. After all, I'm using this official's identity." "What's your identity?" "Your identity is an official of Great Tang. You're a person, a living person. You're not the Ministry of Revenue. You're using the identity of the Ministry of Revenue when introducing and promoting products. What does that have to do with you? Li Longji argued with Wang Bei. Wang Bei lowered his head and thought about it. That's right. They're recommending that the Minister of Revenue wants a fish tank. If I don't allow it, I'll have to resign from my position as the Minister of Revenue. That's because the Minister of Revenue doesn't belong to me, but to Great Tang. But why does it feel like there's a problem? Is it me? Isn't it me? Can I represent myself? Can't I represent myself? If I don't allow my portrait to be hung, and I only mention the Minister of Revenue, will His Majesty not allow me to be a minister? If I'm still a minister, shouldn't I continue to hang my portrait? Wang Bei once again had the thought of banging his head against the wall. Yu Wenrong smiled. He patted Wang Bei's shoulder and gestured for him to move back. He walked over to Li Longji and said, Your Majesty, this subject thinks that it's fine to hang my portrait as a promotion. But when this subject is on duty, I'm an official. After work, it's my own time. Can this subject remove my portrait during this period of time? In other words, Yu Wenrong, you're no longer an official of the Secretariat after work? Li Longji asked. Yu Wenrong also shook his head. After pondering for a moment, he said, It's not easy for this subject to take care of my face. Should this subject be given some material compensation when using this subject's face for promotion? This, Li Longji put on a contemplative expression and looked at Gao Lisher. Gao Lisher very cooperatively interjected. Is it written in the contract? Is there such a law in our dynasty? Isn't that right, everyone? In the end, he asked the people who came to buy the item. They were all watching and listening, finding it very interesting. The officials of the imperial court were actually arguing, and even the emperor was joining in the fun. This was a feeling he had never felt before. Yes, he had never felt like this before. It was very warm, and made him feel like he was very close to the officials of the imperial court and the emperor. His Majesty was really open-minded. When the officials were questioning him, he could still patiently explain. It was worth it. He didn't come here for nothing. Even if the fish tank was more expensive, it wouldn't be a problem. General Gao is right. Is it written in the contract? Our dynasty doesn't have such a law, so we won't pay. Someone gathered his courage and spoke up. The others also said, We won't pay, we won't pay. Wang Bei glared at them. What are you guys talking about? Are you bullying me? I'll go to your houses to eat later, and eat until you're poor. There was a burst of laughter around them. Some people had already begun to invite Wang Bei to their houses, saying that they would prepare something to eat that would definitely satisfy the Minister of Revenue. Wang Bei wasn't angry. He laughed and said to the people around him, You've all been deceived. Didn't you hear what the Minister of Works, Zhang Zhong, said just now? The price used to be 150 strings of coins, but now it's 200 strings of coins. You guys spend an extra 25% of the money, and you're still laughing. If it was in the past, the scene in front of them would have been unimaginable. Now it was revered to be close to the people. Lowering one's status to speak did not mean that one had lost one's power. On the contrary, one could gain the approval of others. It's not expensive, it's not expensive. We actually didn't spend an extra 25% of the money. It's 33%. With His Majesty and the officials promoting it, we'll buy it even if it's more expensive. The person who was the most courageous spoke up again. Thus, there was another sound of agreement from the crowd. Li Longji was in a good mood. He liked to see the current situation. According to Xiao Bao, it could increase one's charisma. Occasionally interacting with the people could make one's image bigger. At the same time, he really made money. Although it was used to deceive people, he could still gain additional benefits when he deceived the officials. He believed that from today onwards, the Ministry of Works luxury goods would sell even better. Otherwise, it wouldn't be worth it for him, the emperor, to run out and waste time with a group of officials. Xiao Bao was thoughtful. He used everything he could to gain other benefits. His strategy was indeed unusual. At this moment, Yu Wenrong didn't think about any compensation. He also didn't think about taking down his portrait. If he brought it up again, it would make the people around him feel bored. There was no need to be so calculative. Thus, Yu Wenrong gave up on his previous thoughts. He said to Zhang Zhong, "Brother Yongqing, it's fine if you die. Can you hand over the fish tanks to us?" Zhang Zhong nodded and signaled to the salesperson. Immediately, someone brought out the fish tanks from the warehouse. They brought one out and directly sold it in the reception room. The first one was Yu Wenrong's. The empty fish tank was placed there. There were also a few glass jars filled with fish. They were a type of mutated goldfish with slightly darker bodies. Yu Wenrong chose them himself. He liked this color. Seeing that the things were brought out, Yu Wenrong walked closer to take a closer look. He said, "We need to cultivate more ornamental fish species to meet the increasing demand of the people. Can I find someone to bring them home? What about the other things? Brother Yu Wenrong, did you bring the money? Just make up the balance." Zhang Zhong asked Yu Wenrong. Chapter 1285. Yu Wenrong was stunned. He touched his body with both hands and shook his head helplessly. "I can't possibly carry so much money with me, right?" Wang Bei added, "That's right. Who would carry a few hundred strings of cash with them? Do you think they're your little ones? You put so much money in your bag, as if you're afraid you don't have enough money to buy things. Then what should we do?" Zhang Zhong looked troubled. "Go back and get someone to deliver it to you. Can we still go back on our word?" Wang Bei felt that Zhang Zhong was very disgusting. What was his status? Would he not give money? Zhang Zhong shook his head. "No, you can't break the rules. How about you give me a written agreement first, and I'll lend you some money. I brought money. Look." As he spoke, Zhang Zhong took out a handful of bills. They were all large denominations. "Okay, Lord Zhang, I finally know you today. You're ready, right? Lend, come, I'll give you a written agreement." Wang Bei squeezed the words out of his mouth. He took the pen and paper from the person beside him and was about to write when he was stopped by Zhang Zhong. "Wait, my money needs to flow. If I lend it out, there needs to be interest. Otherwise, wouldn't it be better if I kept it in the bank? 20% interest according to the day, okay? Okay, 5% is fine. I'll write." Wang Bei was about to write again when he was stopped by Zhang Zhong again. "Don't write too little. One set is 200 strings of cash. You took out 150 strings of cash before, which was the deposit for 3 sets. I gave you a 20% discount, so it's 480 strings of cash. You have to write 330 strings of cash. Otherwise, you won't have enough money." This time, Wang Bei stopped writing and stared at Zhang Zhong. The others were also angry. How could they raise the price at this time? It wasn't that they were short of money. The benefits that the Zhang family and Wang family gave them were far more than this amount. Moreover, many precious things couldn't be measured by money. They felt that they had been cheated. Why did the original amount change? Minister of War Shaosong came to Zhang Zhong and snorted. "In the beginning, it was 150 strings of cash. Why did you raise the price today? We paid for it. When the price of the goods changes, the money you paid is still the deposit." "That's right." Zhang Zhong opened his eyes wide and said innocently. Jiang Xin joined in the fun. "We have a contract. It's written in black and white. How can we change it just like that? We have to follow the contract." "Contract? I have one too." Zhang Zhong took out the contract and gestured for everyone to gather around. He pointed to the words on it and said, "First, if there is a quality problem with the ordered product, we will replace and repair it for free. Second, if we can't provide the product, we will return all the deposits. Third, once the product is delivered, we must pay in full. Fourth, write down that we have paid a deposit of 150 strings of coins. Do you see that? The order in the first clause means that it hasn't been completely confirmed yet. That is to say, when the actual selling price of the product changes, it has to change accordingly, right? I'm not buying any more. Refund the money," Wang Ke said in a huff. Zhang Zhong shook his head. "We can't refund it. Look at the last clause. It says that we have paid a deposit of 150 strings of coins. It doesn't say that the price of 3 sets of fish tanks is 150 strings of coins. It only says the total amount and uses the word confirmed. The money you paid has already been confirmed, so we can't refund it. You're being shameless." How can you write a contract like that? It's clearly a scam. Zhang Zhong, you have a big family business. Do you have to play such a small trick with us? Wang Ke criticized Zhang Zhong, and the officials echoed him. The others in the reception hall were dumbfounded. They watched the officials argue over money and gained a lot of insight. Li Longji said, "Don't argue. Pay attention to your image. There's nothing wrong with the contract. Follow the contract. If you paid for the fish tank, take it back. If you don't, just pretend that you didn't buy it. The money won't be refunded. If you don't believe me, ask the others and see if that's the case." As Li Longji spoke, he looked at the people around him. Everyone nodded. Logically speaking, it should be like that. It was written clearly in the contract. At this time Gao Lisher appeared. He looked at the contract, and then looked at the crowd. He sighed and said, "This shows that the laws of our dynasty are not complete. It seems that we are following the contract, but in fact, everyone knows the real situation. Today we as officials have encountered this situation. We have to bear with it. Unless we use official status and power that we shouldn't use, we have to follow the contract. Is that right?" As soon as Gao Lisher said this, the reception hall fell silent. Everyone was thinking. After a while, Yu Wenrong said, "That's right. If it were the people, according to the current situation, there would be endless disputes. Even the local Yamen officials wouldn't be able to sort them out. The law doesn't mention this. Therefore, we shouldn't be thinking about how much the fish tank is worth. Instead, we should be thinking about how to improve the laws of our dynasty. From the looks of the contract, it is clearly disadvantageous to us, the buyer, while providing enormous benefits to the seller. It is simply unfair to the buyer and seller. This kind of contract should have a supplementary law to correct it. When a situation occurs where one of the parties is benefiting from the contract, and the true transaction between the two parties when the contract was signed, then the contract should be nullified, and the party who violated the true intent of the transaction should be punished. Otherwise, my great Tang will be thrown into chaos." Everyone thought about it again. Thinking about it, it really was the case. Originally, when the two sides made a deal, the goal was to achieve their own benefits. This was the intention set by the two sides when the contract was signed. The purpose of the contract was to achieve, complete, and satisfy this intention. But later on, if one side found out that the contract had violated the true intent of the signing, and used the contract to obtain additional benefits, then everyone would play with the contract. Most importantly, the contract also needed to be protected by the law. Many contents were written, but they might not be recognized and supported by the law of the Great Tang. The Minister of Rights Su Yi stepped forward. "Your Majesty, this subject understands. When we return, this subject will immediately gather people to improve the laws of our dynasty and patch up any loopholes that may appear. But, Your Majesty also knows that no matter how we patch it up, there will always be people who will find loopholes. For example, Xiaobao." Everyone nodded. It was true. There were only thieves for 1,000 days, but there were no thieves for 1,000 days. The attacker would always have an easier time than the defender, and the defender would always lose. This was especially true for someone like Xiaobao. As long as he was willing, he could exploit one loophole after another. It was impossible to guard against. "Really change it? Why didn't you mention it in the past?" Li Longji asked with a serious expression. The officials lowered their heads. Why didn't they mention it in the past? Wasn't it because they wanted to obtain more benefits for their families? Moreover, with their high statuses, they didn't have to worry about being cheated. Only after love do you know the depth of your knowledge. Only after getting drunk do you know how strong the wine is. Zhang Zhong said. This was a line that his future daughter-in-law had said in a poem that she had copied from someone else. Furthermore, we can give an example. For example, when buying a house, because the location is good, we will first sell it, and then have the buyer pay a deposit. Merchants who lack funds will use this deposit, or the full amount to buy the materials for construction. Once the construction is done, we will suddenly raise the price, just like when we bought the fish tank today. Even if you spend a lot of effort to get the money back, You will lose the interest that you saved in the bank. What will make you even angrier is that you didn't manage to buy the house. You put in a lot of effort, but in the end, you didn't get anything. A narrow-minded person will only anger themselves to death. Thus, we will not allow such a thing to happen. Li Longji added. He had also heard Zhang Xiaobao's example. Because the price of the house was high, it was the best explanation of the problem. Yuan Qianyao cupped his fists at Zhang Zhong. Brother Yongcheng, we have learned from you. Today's situation was probably set up by Her Majesty and you. We usually have good benefits, and we don't lack money. However, when the price of the fish tank changed, we were very angry. We don't care about the amount of money, but we can't stand being cheated. If we are like this, what about others? I will write an IOU to borrow money and buy 160 strings of coins for a set. I will buy 3 sets. I will put 1 set in my office, another set at home, and another set for those who need to be warned. Every time I see the ornamental fish swimming in the fish tank, I will encourage myself. I will also borrow money. Yu Wenrong added. Borrow. Sign it. The officials went to write the IOU one by one. Li Longji looked and smiled. We are relieved. With all of you here, the Tang Empire has nothing to worry about. Okay. I will give each of you a fish worth 10 strings of coins. One of the non-officials shouted. The others immediately followed. One wanted to give some water plants. Another wanted to give a few stones. They all opened their bags. They felt that today was too blissful. They actually saw so many things, and the scene in front of them made them feel even more comfortable. The emperor and officials of the imperial court were sincerely serving the people. They weren't high and mighty, and didn't care about anything. The officials at the top were good, and they weren't afraid that the officials at the bottom would go against them. They believed that if there were any officials who dared to make false judgments, the people at the top would teach the officials at the bottom a lesson. Zhang Zhong didn't expect that he would be able to earn additional interest. For a moment he felt quite embarrassed. He smiled at every colleague who came to write the IOU, and said that there would be other returns. After all, there was still a gift. It seemed that he had to reconsider what to give. Not long after, the money was paid. The fish tanks were carried away one by one. There were also other items that were sent away. Li Longji said a few words to the others, and left with the officials. Behind him, there were shouts of "Long live," which attracted the attention of the passers-by. After asking around, they found out about what happened at the fish tank store. In just a few days, this matter spread throughout the entire Tang Empire. In an instant, the sound of firecrackers could be heard, and the local officials were under great pressure. Chapter 1286. Li Longji had asked Xiaobei and the others to come to Idyll on the pretext that they missed him. They were currently standing in front of a house in a relatively poor area of the city. They were asked to support the situation. The children of several neighboring families in this area wanted to negotiate with their parents, but they realized that they did not have the means to negotiate with their parents. Thus, they came to the restaurant and asked Xiaobei to help. At least, they had to maintain fairness. Otherwise, what if they were beaten by their parents while they were negotiating? At that time, not only would they not achieve their goal, but they would also suffer losses. Wouldn't that be even worse? Thus, Xiaobei and the others came, including the little boy who had been playing Monopoly with them at home for many days. He was a little confused from all the playing. There were a total of 5 children looking for Xiaobei. All of them had the surname Chun, and they lived in the same neighborhood. They had moved from the same village and settled down here. They had a very good relationship with each other, and the neighborhood was harmonious. The children and their families were naturally influenced by their adults. They usually stayed together at school and after school, even when they were playing. After playing for a long time, they would eat and stay at a certain house. Even if it was only a few steps away from home, they would still stay. The 5 children were all boys. The oldest was 10 years old, and the youngest was 8.5 years old. They could be considered to be around the same age. They were in trouble, and it was a very big trouble for them. Their money had been taken away by their parents, who said that they would save it for when they grew up and married. However, They wanted to use the money now. They needed to do their own things, and not deposit it in the bank. The 5 children were very good at their studies, and could get scholarships every semester. They had their own accounts in the bank, where their scholarships were stored. However, their deposit certificates were now taken away by their parents, and they were not allowed to withdraw them. Even so, they were not discouraged. They used their free time to buy snacks, and then sold some of them at school. Then, they ran to the market, and set up a small stall with the gadgets they made, which they used to exchange for money. At this time, Xiaobei was holding a toothpick box they made. It was a box at the bottom, with a little bird on top. When he pressed the bird's head with his hand, the little bird would take out a toothpick from the box. This thing did not require much skill, and Xiaobei also had one at home. However, it was not a bird but a button. Every time he pressed it, a toothpick would come out. It was just that he did not take it out to sell. The 5 boys thought of and designed and made it themselves. In addition to this thing, there was also a thing in Xiaobei's hand that could be rotated to brush the jar. As long as he put the brush into the jar, the hair on it would start to rotate, and then brush the parts of the jar that were inconvenient to use. These 2 things were part of their stalls, and there were also several other tools that were convenient for use in daily life. They were simple to make, but they were very practical. They sold these things for money, and used the money to buy other things. They were now making a model plane. In fact, it was not a plane but a bird, because there were now people selling rubber bands. They wanted to use this kind of rubber band to accumulate strength. In the past, they could only use animal tendons, and the effect was very poor. Now they felt that the new monkey rubber band could let the birds fly. However, due to the shape of the bird, they did not succeed after a few attempts. They still needed to improve it further, and buy more advanced measuring tools. After searching, they found a shop in the city called the Magical Toy Shop. There were several measuring tools that could be sold. They were better than the ones they used in class, and they were more accurate. They were made of steel. Then they found a small battery-powered motor, but this thing was not for sale. They could only continue to use rubber bands to make their birds. Tools required money. Every time they tested a broken rubber band, they needed money. Their money was taken away by the adults, and they did not even leave the money for selling the items. When they could not think of any other way, they chose to find Xiaobei and have a righteous negotiation with their families. Xiaobei and the 10 of them arrived just like that. Furthermore, Xiaobei also understood what was going on. Although the children were young, they liked to invent and create. The adults probably felt that they were spending money recklessly, so they controlled their funds. "You're not back yet? It's wrong for you to skip class," Xiaobei said to a boy beside him. This boy was called Chun Ming, a very common name. He was the only one accompanying Xiaobei and the others. The other 4 boys ran to find their parents. Their parents also had to work, and were not at home during the day. Anyway, they ate at school, and did not need the adults to take care of them. This saved their parents a lot of trouble. Chun Ming also had an anxious expression. He looked at the end of the road and shook his head. "Not yet. I think we have to wait. We have to work at the dock, and another workshop that takes half an hour to walk. Xiaobei, when my parents come back, you have to help us. Look, we are making our own things, and spending our own money. It doesn't affect our studies. Why don't they let us do it? Why do they want me to read? Didn't I read it? After reading it, I wanted to make something small. In the future, I will make something bigger and more technical to repay the great Tang Empire. They won't let me read. They won't allow me to use the knowledge in the books. What's the purpose of reading? It's not like it's a storybook." Xiaobei nodded. She also felt that the parents of the 5 boys were too much. Not only did their studies not affect them, they could also make money and do research. What reason did they have to stop them? Moreover, she looked at the gadget in her hand. Although it was small, she put a lot of thought into it. She should encourage it, not restrain it. Why didn't the bird fly? Xiaobei had not seen the real thing, and did not know what the bird looked like. She felt that maybe she could help the 5 of them with some ideas. "I'll go get it for you. It's in Brother Xiaotao's house." Chun Ming left this sentence, and ran to a nearby house. The door was unlocked, and one could enter by opening it. After a while, Chen Ming came back with a face full of tears. He held a small bag in his hand and handed it to Xiaobei, sobbing. It's broken. The bird we worked so hard to make was trampled by the adults. How could they do this when we weren't home? It's broken. The rubber band is also broken. We can't find the tool ruler, small carving knife and pliers. Xiaobei put down the two things in her hand and took the bag. Of course the bamboo bird was trampled. There were even shoe prints on it. In an instant, Xiaobei's heart was filled with anger. Too much, too much. How could there be adults like this? They treat their own children without the slightest scruple. Xiao Yuan came over to take a look, and showed a sad expression. He said indignantly, the adults in their house never considered the children's thoughts. They used their absolute authority as parents to stifle the children's independent thoughts. They think they are always right. If that was the case, then they shouldn't live in this place. They should live in a spacious and luxurious courtyard. Since they didn't go there, it shows that they are far inferior to those people in this society. Then what right do they have to decide the children's future? Exactly, Xiaobei huffed. They think that if the children listen to them, they will have a bright future. But they have no bright future. So what right do they have to believe that if they listen to them, the children will have a bright future? Xiao Hai added, brother and sister are the best. They never told us what to do, only told us what to do and what to do. They let us choose for ourselves. No matter what we choose, brother and sister will support us. They will help us adjust where we went wrong and analyze why we went wrong. I know that we made many mistakes, but we never made the same mistake. Moreover, brother and sister will help us solve the problems left behind by our mistakes. This is true care, not like Chen Ming and the others, who won't allow us to do this or that. Everyone's path is different, so why do we have to choose? I don't understand. Actually, my parents are very good. When they couldn't eat meat, they would leave it for me. They even made new clothes for me. They didn't wear them themselves. But now they are not afraid. Life is good. If you want to eat meat, you can buy some every day. I have to thank your brother and sister. Chen Ming suddenly spoke up for his parents. When he talked about the good life, his rosy, tear-stained face revealed a smile. Don't mention it, it's what we should do. After all, we are all working hard for the Tang dynasty. Xiaobei was modest. Xiao Yuan comforted Chen Ming, telling him not to worry, and that things would go smoothly. While they were talking, Chen Ming's father returned with two other people. From the looks of it, they were working in the same place. When they saw Xiaobei's group, the three adults were very cautious. It wasn't that Xiaobei's group wasn't cute, but that their son told them what they had to face on the way back. Now that Xiaobei came to them, and it was about the children, it was hard to deal with. After a while, the other two men also arrived. The woman didn't come, presumably because the men in the family had the final say. Who stepped on the bird? Xiaobei's face didn't have a trace of kindness, asking with drooping eyelids. I am Chen Tao's father. I am Chen Kaming. A man said carefully. Pay. Xiaobei spat, not caring about his image. Chen Kaming, you came up with this name. How are you open-minded? When your big foot landed on the little bird, did you become enlightened? Why don't you let them work? Chen Tao's father, Chen Kaming, was very nervous. He was afraid that Xiaobei would get angry and take him away. What would happen if he was no longer in the family? When he heard Xiaobei's question, he immediately answered, I actually want my son to have a bright future. Xiaobei, look at what they are doing. They are clearly craftsmen. How can craftsmen have a bright future? They should study hard and become the top scorer in the future. That's the heart of all parents. Don't talk about parents. My father is from the Ministry of Works, a craftsman. I don't think my father is bad. I am proud of him. Xiaobei didn't wait for him to finish and interrupted him. The five men were speechless. Your father is from the Ministry of Works, but your father is also the top scorer. Chapter 1287. The five men didn't refute Xiaobei's claim that the Ministry of Works was equivalent to craftsmen, because it was meaningless. What they needed to do now was to discuss with Xiaobei and achieve their goals without making him angry. They exchanged glances, and Chen Kaming was the one who spoke. Xiaobei, I realized that you've become cuter. How did you change? Really? I think so too. Xiaobei revealed a big smile and blinked his eyes, looking very satisfied. Really, it's definitely true. Chen Kaming smiled. Xiaobei seemed to be embarrassed and said, Do you want to know how I became cuter? Yes. I think I'm not the only one. Everyone in the world is wondering how you changed. Chen Kaming asked. It's very simple. I'm doing what I like at home. My brothers and sisters didn't force me to only read textbooks. Instead, they let me freely learn the knowledge I need. If you follow them, your child will also become very cute, right? Xiaobei still had that smile on his face. Chen Kaming was speechless. I'm asking you, is my brother and sister's method right or wrong? Xiaobei asked. Ha 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 ha. Chen Kaming's son, Chen Tao, laughed at Xiaobei's words. Chen Kaming turned his head and glared fiercely at his son, scaring Chen Tao so much that he scampered over to Xiaobei and the others. He looked at his father with a sly look in his eyes. It was obvious that he had taken advantage of his father. Chen Kaming nodded. Yes, Xiaobao and Cuckoo wouldn't do anything wrong. Then he looked at Xiaobei, then glanced at Xiao Yuan and the others. He sighed and revealed a helpless expression. He said to Xiaobei, Xiaobao and Wan taught you guys really well. But we're not Xiaobao and Cuckoo. We don't have the ability to teach our children to be like you, not even half of them. We can only throw our children to the school. Whenever we had time, we would also go to the night school to learn. The day before yesterday, I had learned a total of 230 common words. I could recognize them, but I couldn't write many of them. My favorite thing to do was to go home and watch Xiao Tao read and write. At that time, all the tiredness of the day seemed to disappear, and my heart was sweeter than eating honey. I'll be like this for the rest of my life. I won't be able to achieve anything great, but I have Xiao Tao. Xiao Tao's handwriting is better than mine, and he knows more words than me. I am very happy. Recently, when he came back at night, he didn't read all the time. He would take a few glances at the book and write in his notebook for a while. Then, he would immediately take out his tools and do what only a craftsman could do. The moment I saw her, I felt as if my heart was being stabbed by a knife. I don't have much knowledge, but I know that those without knowledge will be left behind by others. If I don't learn, what will I do in the future? As Chen Kaming spoke, tears flowed down his cheeks. Chen Tao, who was happy just now, saw his father cry. When he thought about his father's words, he also cried. He ran to his father's side and lowered his head to comfort him. Dad, don't be sad. I've always been good at my studies, and I'll be good in the future. Xiaobei's eyes turned and asked Chen Tao on behalf of Chen Kaming. Then why don't you study properly? If you stop after taking a few glances, won't you be unable to connect the dots when you read again? The other men, whose eyes were also red, nodded. When Chen Tao answered, they realized that their children were the same as Chen Tao. Chen Tao raised his sleeves and rubbed his eyes. He replied to Xiaobei, I've already learned what the school teaches. I'm not reading textbooks, but the handmade books in the school library. Of course, I have to read and write at the same time. The reason why I write and draw is because I need to calculate the proportions of the bird's structure. Not only did I finish learning the 3rd grade, I also learned the 5th grade, especially arithmetic. The main reason is that I can't calculate proportions in the 3rd grade. I heard that when I go to school, the calculation will be faster, and I'll be able to calculate things that I can't calculate now. But I want to make something first. I'll learn as I work, so that the skills I learn will be more solid. My parents think that I'm only reading the 3rd grade books. They haven't asked me, so how would I know what they're thinking? Anyway, I'm not wrong. When he said that, the 5 adults were stunned. They looked at their children, who were all puffing out their chests. They were clearly saying that they were also skipping grades to study, but the grades they were skipping were different. Similarly, they were all working hard for that little bird. Did you hear that? My enlightened uncle. Not only did the little bird not delay their studies, it even encouraged them to study harder. The work of a craftsman also requires a large amount of knowledge to support it. If they want the little bird to fly better, they have to fly higher in the sky of knowledge. Xiaobei looked at the 5 boys with appreciation. and said to Chen Kaming with a faint smile. Xiao Yuan quickly cooperated and said, Yes, yes. The little bird needs a pair of wings to fly. Dreams also need a pair of wings. Xiao Hai rarely spoke. Actually, everything is about communication and interaction. We don't expect you to treat us like our older brothers and sisters, observing our emotional changes all the time. When you notice that something is a little different from usual, you will ask the inner court members who follow us what happened to us, and then use silent methods to help us. We only need you to ask your children more often, see what they want to do, and where you can help them. For example, to make a little bird, you have to use bamboo. Children don't have much strength in their hands. If you help them with simple carpentry, won't they be able to save time and use it to study? There was no need to make it seem like a war, where one side would overwhelm the other, or both sides would suffer great losses. If they develop a rebellious mentality and resist by not studying hard, then you will regret it for life. Isn't that so? We're here today. If we didn't come, you adults would control Xiao Ming, and the rest through the authority of the parents. They would play a non-violent and non-cooperative game with you, and both sides would suffer. Xiao Bei also said. She felt very bored and sullen, because she knew that many parents in the Tang dynasty were like this. They always thought that they were right, that their children were young, and didn't need to be communicated with. As long as they provided food and clothes, there would be no problem with their studies. But how many students and teachers were there in the school? Could the teachers manage them all? Look at the officials in the imperial court in the capital. How many of them didn't care about their families and studied in the school to become officials? Those were all children from aristocratic families and were specially cared for. They would follow their fathers from a young age, learn how to write and read, listen to their fathers talk about life principles, and imitate their father's way of doing things. The officials in the imperial court fought their way up, and their need for survival knowledge far surpassed the knowledge in books. There were also special ones, such as older brothers and sisters, who schemed from a young age to lead their families to the peak of power in the Tang dynasty. But how many people in the Tang dynasty were like older brothers and sisters? Troublesome, really troublesome. The more Xiao Bei thought about it, the more upset she felt. She hated that she couldn't split into countless people, and then replace all the parents in the Tang dynasty to educate their children. She wanted to use the method used on Pan-Er and her sister to educate all the children in the Tang dynasty. Xiao Yuan shook her head and said to Chen Kaming and the rest, That's it for today. Now that the matter is clear, help the children more in the future. After we leave, you are not allowed to hit the children. If you hit them, it's revenge. It's not just the children, it's also revenge on us. We will think that you feel that we shouldn't reach out and vent your dissatisfaction with us by hitting the children. That is a provocation to us. Don't say that I'm threatening you. You know the consequences. I won't hit them, I won't hit them, and I won't hit them in the future. Where can I find such a good son? Chen Kaming promised, then raised his head and patted his son Xiao Tao's head. At this moment, his heart was filled with infinite joy. It turned out that his son was so amazing. He finished learning all the 5th grade, so that he could make better calculations when he was a little bird. Little birds were really useful. After being happy for a while, Chen Kaming asked Xiao Bei, I want to discuss something with you. Can you teach us the method that Xiao Bao and Cuckoo taught you? Haha. Xiao Bei laughed and shook her head. We can't learn it. A few days ago, we were worried about selling dogs. Big Brother heard about it, and immediately sent 3 different grades of rice crust to guide us. Big Brother and Big Sister have never directly told us what is right or wrong. They always use other methods to let us think for ourselves and make a choice. How do you learn it? For example, when we go to the river to catch fish, if the child I lead accidentally pricks his foot, and your child takes the lead, what would you do? Would you tell your child not to bring other children to the river in the future? Chen Kaming nodded. That's right. If his child led other children to play, and the other children got injured, he would definitely tell his child not to do so in the future. Seeing you nod, it means that you admit it. But if it were our big brothers and sisters, They would take out toys to play with us after they found out about it. While playing, they would also teach us how to lead our own team through the actions and behavior of the characters in the toys. For example, when we are playing, we can't put all our energy into making ourselves happy. We also have to take care of other people. For example, we can observe the places where we are playing and analyze the possible dangers first to reduce our overall losses. This is the teaching method of our big brothers and sisters. They teach us to face all kinds of difficulties in life and think of ways to solve them. What about you? You are escaping. How do you learn it? Later, I will ask my big brothers and sisters to see if there is any good way to make you worry as much as possible, because it doesn't involve your 5 families. Xiaobei didn't hide his pride at all when he spoke. Chen Kaming and the other 5 adults were dumbfounded. So this was how Xiao Bao and Cuckoo taught their younger siblings. Then how much effort did they put in? No wonder the little guys were so good. Perhaps for Xiao Bao and Cuckoo, they didn't need to spend too much effort to achieve that kind of teaching method. But they couldn't learn it, because if they wanted to teach their children well, they first had to ensure that they were better. Chen Kaming gave up on learning Xiao Bao and Cuckoo's teaching method. He rubbed his hands, looked at his son, and asked, "Let me ask you, other than helping my son do simple carpentry, what else do I need to do to be considered a qualified adult?" Xiaoyuan waved at Chen Kaming. When Chen Kaming came closer, Xiaoyuan gestured for him to bend down, and then whispered in his ear, "When you ask this in front of your child, you are not qualified." Then Xiaoyuan explained to Chen Kaming, "Every child worships their father. You have to remember that no matter what situation you encounter, you have to maintain a strong front. Even if this so-called strong front looks ridiculous to you, it is the source of your child's confidence. Even if you fight with someone outside and get beaten black and blue, when you return home, you have to talk about how you beat them up. You can't sigh in front of your child, because your child needs you to be strong. What if one day my child finds out and helps me clean my wounds? What should I do?" Chen Kaming didn't treat Xiaoyuan as a child at all, and humbly asked for advice. "That means your child has grown up and should be congratulated. He will work harder and is willing to take on part of the family's responsibilities. For example, we know that although our family is strong, there are also many difficulties. We will learn well and try our best to help our big brothers and sisters solve some small problems so that they can relax." Xiaoyuan said to Chen Kaming with a smile. Chen Kaming rubbed Xiaoyuan's head. "You are so sensible. If my son is like you one day, I will be relieved. What else should I do now? First, help the 5 of them fix the little bird. If you have free time, go to the school without them knowing, and tell the school teacher about this. Make an agreement with the teacher to not tell the children. Then, specially target your children with some tutoring, so that they can fix the little bird faster. The second step is to come up with a new idea, to let the children feel that a little bird isn't very powerful. Guide them, or rather tempt them, so that they have higher goals and can continue to learn more knowledge." Xiaoyuan helped to come up with ideas. This method was very simple to him. However, Chen Kaming gritted his teeth as he listened. Seeing Xiaoyuan, a child who was supposed to be educated, actually educating others, he felt that it was very strange. After thinking for a while, he nodded to Xiaoyuan. "Okay, I will listen to you. I will try. It's okay if I am a little tired, as long as I can teach Xiaotao well. I finally know why Xiao Bao and Cuckoo teach you like that. You are really too smart. If we teach you directly, you will feel that your big brothers and sisters are looking down on you. And even if they teach you in a roundabout way, when you learn, you also have to consider whether your big brothers and sisters are using this method to educate you. Right?" Xiaoyuan nodded vigorously as if he had met a confidant. "Yes, that's right. You also studied psychology. We have indeed been on guard all along. We know that our big brothers and sisters are very powerful, but we are not bad ourselves. So we always want to expose our big brothers and sisters, but the results are not satisfactory. You also know their ability to calculate. To us, it is impossible to guard against them. Every time, we can only react after. We really can't maintain a high level of vigilance in every little bit of life. However, our big brothers and sisters educate us in life, like a heavenly steed soaring across the sky, but also like antelopes hanging their horns. Ha 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 ha. Chen Kaming looked at Xiao Yuan's wrinkled little face and listened to what he said, laughing heartily. Okay, what is there to laugh about? Do we have any unhappy things to tell you so that you can be happy? Go control your son. Xiao Yuan was very helpless from the laughter and pushed Chen Kaming's head away. The matter here was settled. There was no need to continue to worry about the 5 boys being punished by their families. Xiao Bei and the others were not very happy. It was easy to settle one family, and it was not difficult to settle 5 families. However, there were many families in Tang dynasty like them. The relationship between parents and children was not well handled. How to change it was a difficult problem. Let's go back and ask our big brothers and sisters if they have any ideas, Xiao Bei said. We can't ask directly. It seems that we are not good enough. We have to go in a roundabout way and trap our big brothers and sisters. I don't believe that we can't out-scheme them every time, right? Xiao Yuan suggested. The other children nodded. Zhang Xiaobao and Wang Wan, who were about to be schemed against by their younger brother and sister, had just heard the report from the person who followed Xiao Bei and the others and came back early. However, the 2 of them did not specifically spend time on such matters. One was that it was too simple, and the other was that Jinla had sent back information that involved the issue of whether to start a war. The information is too simple. I need the details. Let's wait. Zhang Xiaobao saw the telegram that was sent back first. On it, there were only 4 words. Operation successful. The specific process was not written, nor were the consequences. Even the location of the sender was not mentioned. The 4 words on the paper could only mean that the Meteor Battle Squad had captured them. Judging by the time, if nothing big happened, the Meteor Squad should have captured him in the other party's royal city. Otherwise, they would have captured him somewhere outside the city. What we need to know now is the other party's reaction. Wang Wan was also looking at the 4 words. After thinking for a while, she continued. I don't think it will cause a war. Let's make arrangements first, and let the team enter a state of combat readiness. If they send back detailed information saying that the Jinla soldiers are on the move, we'll go directly and attack them first. If they don't do anything, we'll continue to lead the team to the west and act as a surprise force to help the other 3 fronts. At the same time, we'll collect information on the weather and environment of this era to prepare for the future colonization. Zhang Xiaobao listened carefully. When Wang Wan finished, he said, I guess there's no problem. The Meteor Battle Squad must have sent us a message after they have settled down. Otherwise, they would be in the middle of a battle. If they won the battle, the message they sent back should be Operation Successful. It would not be the 4 words now. It's the Jinla's luck that they didn't attack us. Lu Zhou has built 4 more ships that can be used to transport troops. If they dare to attack us or protest, I'll send out the troops. Let us see the power of my guards and Lu Zhou's wolf soldiers. Wang Wan said with a cold face and a determined look in her eyes. Zhang Xiaobao bit his lip and said, even if they don't send out the troops, I'll still teach them a lesson. This matter isn't over yet. How dare they come to Great Tang to bully our women? They shouldn't think that they'll be forgiven by us just because they didn't stop the Meteor Battle Squad. They should be punished for their mistakes. Every time I think about those 2 women, I get so angry that my stomach hurts. My stomach hurts. I'm going to cook. After Zhang Xiaobao finished speaking, he stood up and walked out. Wang Wan followed him and asked, It's still early, right? It's not early. What the little ones encountered today made them angry as well. They're still trying to beat around the bush with us. I'll let them know that the gap between us exists, and it won't be easily reversed. It's just a matter of family education. I'll cook. I'll make twice-cooked pork. Zhang Xiaobao winked at Wang Wan and said, You're tuning in to the Li Mei's Wuxia Whispers YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.